What's that? Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, May 9th meeting of the Sierra Madre City Council. Is there an echo?
Yeah, there's an echo.
There is an echo. You've got a booming voice, but extra booming tonight.
I'll try again. Is there an echo? Yeah, there's an echo. Is one of the TVs turned on?
Mute it. Try now.
The culprit. Okay, once again, I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 9th meeting of the Sierra Madre City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Edward Garcia.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Creeves.
Here.
Councilmember Jean Goss.
Here.
Councilmember Christine Lowe.
Present.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum this evening.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. We have Councilmember Parkhurst that's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and inspiration for tonight.
Yes, please stand if you're able. Hand over your heart and ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, since it's an election day today, I wanted to share a story that my grandfather shared with me and one that I've shared with my family. So I'm going to read this. This is largely in his words with some light editing. There he goes. So Woodrow Wilson was running for re-election on the slogan, "He kept us out of the war." He won the election, and we entered World War I not long after he was inaugurated. It was an election which engendered strong feelings, strong passions. In fact, it was so strong that there were obvious and that they were obvious to and even shared by a 9-year-old boy. 9-year-olds tend to adopt the politics of their parents just as they adopt their nationality, religion, all sorts of other group loyalties. My parents, particularly my father, were vigorously, almost violently anti-Wilson. We strongly favored Charles Evan Hughes. The election of 1916 was not only a hotly contested one, but also an exceedingly close one. In fact, it was thought for some hours after the results began to come in that Hughes had won. The California results came in later than those from more advanced time zones, and it was the California electoral vote which tipped the balance. At long last, when we were finally convinced that our man had lost, my father quit berating Wilson and told me, "Remember now, Wilson will be our president for another 4 years. He's our president, and we'll give him our backing and support." And this story came to me as I was kind of thinking about our election tonight. We have seen signs all over town. We have gotten phone calls and text messages and things in our mailbox. And you know, it's something that has, as my grandfather said in his comments, that it has engendered strong feelings and strong passions. And so I just, remember at the end, like, one of the things that makes this country so great and so wonderful is that we have elections. We have elections where people have their voice heard. But equally as important as having elections and having our voice heard is abiding by the results. And so no matter what happens tonight, I will say for myself, and I will even take a gander with my fellow colleagues out here, we will abide by the results. We will stand behind what people have felt. And we will move forward. We'll move forward together because this community, it's too important, this community. We have too many issues and too many challenges that we're working on, and we need to work on them together, and we need to work on them collaboratively, because that's what makes Sierra Madre so great and why it is such an honor to serve the people of Sierra Madre. With that, I turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. Wise words. All right, moving on. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda, or do we have any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, just a question, because one of the sets of prior meeting minutes in our packet to approve are the minutes from the April 11th meeting, which is the subject of tonight's public discussion. So I just wondered if the city attorney might have a view on perhaps waiting to approve those minutes until some of the issues that we're discussing tonight are resolved.
I think it's fine to approve it as it is now. The minutes were as they were recorded at the time. If there are misstatements that you feel were made, you can make those corrections, but the Alverno hearing is going to be a continuation of what you've considered already. So if you're concerned that it's going to somehow hurt the record on this proceeding, it won't, because the record will be further developed today.
Okay, that's exactly what my concern was. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. With that, is there a motion?
Oh, so I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have an agenda. Next, moving on for a motion for approval of reading and resolutions and ordinances by title only.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. And as you stated, Mayor Pro Tem, we have two sets of minutes. Let's take them one by one. On the April 11th, 2023 minutes, did we have any substantive changes, changes that the public would like to hear about, or anything from the dais we'd like to change? None? Okay. So let's take a vote on that one. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve the April 11th minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Second set of minutes, we have the Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 meeting. Any substantive changes for these minutes? Madam City Clerk,
Mr. Mayor, there were no substantive changes. There was grammatical changes and non-substance from Councilmember Parkhurst.
Thank you. With that, Councilmember Parkhurst, do you have a motion?
I move to adopt the April 25th amendments, April 25th minutes as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on. Next item on the agenda is the mayor and city council reports. Who would like to start with their reports regarding city business?
I'll go first. No
Please.
report. Thank you.
That's easy. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have a short report. So last Wednesday, I attended the library event. Last week was Library Appreciation Week, and one of the events midweek was to recognize the various local students who had submitted bookmark designs, and there were 2 winners at each grade level. And then of those, 4 were chosen to be printed into bookmarks that would be handed out to the library patrons. And I was there representing the mayor and presenting the award, the mayor's award, the design that he chose. And it was just a really great event. The city manager also handed out an award, the president of the board of trustees, and I think the head librarian perhaps. So yeah, it was a great event. Lots of kids there, enjoying seeing all of their artwork up around the library. And then of course the folks that got chosen to have their bookmark printed were super excited. So it was a really nice night to see all those kids and their families at the library. And I know there were lots of other great events last week at the library, including a May the 4th Be With You event, and that I saw all over social media, which looked also like a great event. So kudos to the library staff for putting on a great week of events, and this one was great as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, I did see some of the lightsabers on TikTok that day, yeah.
Let's see, I attended the Friends of the Library, a partner reception, and it was really fantastic. It was a partnership for the people that are donating to the Friends of the Library and to really help run that part of the organization that then donates to the library itself and a lot of the infrastructure and the programs that they have there. It was a lot of fun. We talked about recruiting and having more people, and of course, everyone who came ended up becoming a partner. And it's really simple to do, everyone. It's only $100, and that puts you as a partner level at the Friends of the Library, so I recommend everybody join. And it was a great evening. I also attended the first community bike ride, and that was fun. And I learned a lot about electric bikes and saw many different models. I did not have one, so I hustled it up, by myself without the help push. But it was a great turnout, so I'm excited for the future, and I can't wait to do the next one next year. And then I attended the SCAG seminar down in Palm Desert. And the SCAG is the Southern California Associations of Government. And we really were highlighting a lot of the environmental issues and ways to have clean energy and other exciting things. So we looked a lot at accelerating clean transportation, and we have a lot coming up on our future agendas involving that. That'll be fun. And I also learned about mobility hubs and how we can improve transportation for everybody and access to everybody in Sierra Madre, as well as our surrounding cities, so they can be able to move at a low cost and make it easy for every type of demographic that we have. And then last, I attended the Congressional Woman of the Year Award with Congresswoman Chu down here in Arcadia, and I will go over that in a little bit more.
Was there anything special for Sierra Madre at the SCAG meeting?
Oh, sorry, yes.
It's okay.
A lot going on. Yes, in fact, we had an honorable mention, thanks to Mr. James Carlson and staff for the clean energy for our panels, our solar panels that we've placed over at the city yards, which power our city pumps, and we had an honorable mention award for that, and a lot of other cities were very excited to hear about how we progressed with that and how it's going. So we're being a leader in our cities.
Thank you, Councilmember Lowe.
I had on this weekend, I had breakfast with the Shift B of the fire department and got to hear a little bit more about everything that's going on with them and get to know them a lot better, and that was delightful. They invited me to come on over. And then she didn't mention it, but both Councilmember Lowe and I were at the art fair, which I commend the senior commission. It was fantastic. Actually, so I was there on Sunday. My family was there on Saturday, and came home with a number of wonderful things. I unfortunately missed the senior commission because of another conflict, which I'll talk about in a second. And I think, because the senior commission is here, they had a couple of things they're talking about, and I believe that they'll bring them up here tonight. So I'll let them. I won't steal their thunder. And the reason I missed the senior commission was because I had a Clean Power Alliance meeting. We've had two in the since the last meeting. And one of them was the board of directors, where we voted on new rates that will start in July. And what it looks like right now going forward is that for people who have the 100% renewable energy, it will be a 3% premium to Southern California Edison. And if you're at either the clean or green, you're going to have a discount to Southern California Edison. And just to put that in context, Edison is at about 77% renewables. So for 3% more on your bill, you're getting 27% more renewable energy, and local control, and lots of other great things that we have as being a member of the Clean Power Alliance. So with that, turn it back to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. There was a planning commission meeting that I think neither Councilmember Lowe nor myself as the alternate attended. She was at the SCAG meeting. I had a work engagement I had to take care of, but we will review the video, and if there's any pertinent information to bring back to council, we'll make sure we'll report out on that at the next meeting. I did also attend the Sierra Madre Art Fair. It was great to see so many out there supporting our friends of the library. My daughter Violet, I guess through my mother-in-law she was wearing an original Sierra Madre Art Fair 1978 t-shirt. being third or fourth generation Sierra Madre, and she was proud to wear that to the event. But it was a pretty good turnout. It was good to see a lot of residents there. I did run into Councilmember Parkhurst and Councilmember Lowe while I was there. And we saw a lot of our residents there contributing to the betterment of Sierra Madre, so that was great to see. I have a few announcements, if I could find them. One is, so I'll just bring up the Older American Award, Old American of the Year. We're honoring this year Clement Nina Bartoli as the Older American. There is a reception tomorrow. It's my understanding it's full, but I just wanted to make sure we made an announcement. And it's my understanding that we will be providing a proclamation to Clement Nina at our next meeting. Also, I'd like you to please mark your calendars to save the date of May 20th for the City Yards Open House event. As you look around, you'll see some of our unsung heroes for Public Works, and you'll see what they do in the city yard. So please come explore our facilities and equipment and give us your feedback. Also learn how to manage your water account through our AMI portal. If you haven't used that, it's really handy. When you think you've got a leak, you can just jump on there and see how much water you've been using over the past hour or throughout the day or throughout the billing cycle. The city yards will be open from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Also on May 20th, the same day, Mackenzie Rich from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife will be hosting Living with Wildlife at the library from noon to 2 p.m. Once again, May 20th from noon to 2 p.m. So you can probably attend both meetings on the 20th. Also, there are a few vacancies on our city commissions. The Community Services Commission has 2 vacancies. Anyone interested in filling these vacancies, please contact our city clerk's office for more information. Also, there is 1 expected vacancy on the Natural Resources Commission. Please contact the city clerk's office if you're interested in that vacancy. And also, driving down the boulevard, I did notice our annual, it's garage sale, yes. That the senior commission, yard sale that is, that our senior commission will be putting on. Hopefully when they give a presentation, they can make a quick mention on that. I didn't catch the date, but that's always a great event put on by our senior commission. They work so hard for our city. And with that, that's the end of my report and announcements. Okay, so moving on, we're going to get into public comment for items not on the agenda. A couple things I just want to bring up before public comment starts. Hopefully this is the last time in a little while that I'll have to talk about this, but since the city clerk's office is just on the other side of the wall and we have a drop-off ballot box outside of City Hall, you're within 100 feet of an election site, so there is no electioneering. So I would encourage you during public comment to keep that in mind. I'm not the electioneering police, but I want to make sure that you've been on notice that depending on what you say, it could be construed as electioneering. Also, as far as public comment, not just for items not on the agenda, but for all the items, we do have a public participation code of conduct, and I'd like to read that. Your participation is welcome and invited at all city council meetings. The council requests that participants refrain from making personal, slanderous, profane, and disruptive remarks. A person who continues to disrupt the orderly conduct of the meeting after being warned by the mayor or designee to cease the disruption may be precluded from further participation in the meeting. No signs, posters, or other large objects shall be brought into the council chambers or other meeting place if doing so would disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly course of the meeting. And with that, I'd like to welcome you to fill out one of the yellow cards there in the bottom if you would like to make public comment on items not on the agenda. You'll have 3 minutes. If you get to that 3-minute point, I will quickly remind you to wrap it up. And if you don't wrap it up, I'm gonna have to gently ask you to take a seat. And please, when you approach, mention your name and where you live. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first speaker is Max Romero.
Welcome, Mr. Romero. We did enjoy your article in the Mountain Views News this week.
Thank you. So my name is Max Romero, and I live up on Sunnyside, and I am 16 years old. Is everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, time will begin on my first word. For most of us, cars are a way of life. But for the 1/5 of Angelinos who choose not to drive, who are unable to, or can't afford the steep prices of car ownership, public transportation is a necessity. Good evening, City Council members. Today I bring about an issue in our town that faces residents and non-residents alike. This issue is the lack of public transportation and accessibility into our city. There are two key points that I would like to address. First, I will speak to the current public transportation system, and then next, I will speak about the need for an updated public transportation arrangement. Let's begin by analyzing the current system. Currently, in order to not need to make the 1.6 mile to Pasadena walk, Councilmember Robert Parker stated in a recent article in the Mountain View News, you must either take Sierra Madre's Gateway Coach, which only runs between 11 and 2 on weekdays, or call on Metro's micro system. According to Rene Casuda, in a response to an op-ed on Metro in the Mountain View News, he either could not book the micro or it would not show up. While this system is well-intentioned, it's not working out in practice. Next, let's ask, who would benefit from an updated system? As a student who commutes to and from school daily, I often make a 45-minute walk to the nearest bus stop each morning. But it's not just students like me who would receive the benefits from an updated system. I've spoken to many people who have expressed the necessity for public transportation in order to get groceries, to get to work, or even just leave Sierra Madre to meet some friends. Rene Casuda says in the response to the op-ed, I've had to turn down several offers to teach at Cal State LA, and I need to ride with friends to go shopping. Grocery shopping, laundry, and work are not extravagancies. Before I end off my speech, I have one final remark I'd like to make. We must remember that through property taxes, as citizens of Los Angeles, California, we are paying for Metro. So why do we continue to pay for a service that does not provide an effective, timely, or even reliable resource? I believe the most viable solution to this inconsistent and ineffective system would be what I wrote in my recent op-ed in the Mountain View News, providing 2 amendments to current routes which would not result in the removal of any stops whatsoever, just slight extensions that would cover Sierra Madre. By reinstating public transportation, we would reopen the gateway to our city not only for others who come to visit, but for our own residents as well. We would reinstate the economic benefits we already pay for and expand the reach of Sierra Madre to surrounding areas. If there's anything to take away from this speech, it is to be the call to action. Let's make steps to move forward to a less car-dependent city and one that provides access to us all.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Mr. Mayor, your second speaker is John Lloyd.
Good evening, John Lloyd, East Laurel, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am. I want to give you a quick update on last weekend's community ride and thank Councilmember Lowe for showing up, and it was a great time. We had a turnout of over 60, which is just fabulous. And I want to give a special shout out to city staff, including Ruby and Lauren and Christina, but especially Rebecca, who really did, a lot of heavy lifting to put the event together. And I also want to thank Sierra Madre PD, who provided traffic control for us at the intersections, which allowed everyone to enjoy streets that in a way that felt safe. And one of the things that struck me about the ride is just how many people of different ages, families. And it indicated to me that I think there is a lot of demand and interest for safe streets in Sierra Madre for walking and biking. And I'm looking forward to working with city staff on our upcoming Complete Street Safety Assessment to be done by UC Berkeley's Safe Trek Institute. And I think that's a real opportunity for us, I hope, to get some community input on maybe areas where folks see the need for some street safety improvements. So looking forward to that. I also want to work with city staff on additional events for family type bike events, and also want to give a shout out to active San Gabriel Valley, which brought the e-bikes to our event. And I hope we can work with them in the future to make affordable rental e-bikes available in town for folks to try. I think it's a great way for folks to get around town without driving and zero emissions, and it's healthy and fun, and you can run errands. So anyway, just want to, I think it's a terrific program, and I hope we take full advantage of that. And so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Rob Stockley.
Good evening, elected representatives. Thank you for the protocol reminder. Mayor Garcia, I hope I've cleaned up my comments, that I'm within the guidelines. So I'm here, Mayor Garcia, to ask that you put the library on the agenda for the May 23rd meeting. I've heard TSK Architects twice now, their presentation at the library trustees, and again this last Saturday at a public forum right here in the City Council chambers, and believe you have selected a well-qualified firm to design a building within the limits of the funding from the state and federal grants, and in a very, very compressed time frame of completion by January of 2025. But it will be a bare bones structure, given that it must first and foremost meet the current building codes for ADA access, including an elevator, which in the old days we used to say was $150,000. I'm sure it's a higher number now than it was. And seismic retrofit and other structural issues, and contain a large contingency to address volatile building material costs and the premium that contractors will charge in order to complete construction in what's going to turn out to be about a 10 to 12 month period. The architect's fees of about $900,000 and the moving and storage of the library collection during construction further reduce the amounts of funds available within those grants for actual construction. So while $10.5 million may seem like a lot of money, for anyone who has remodeled an older home, myself included, let alone a public facility, you know that there will be surprises when the contractor can see inside the walls, and thoughts about making the basement and boiler room into actual usable ADA compliant space should give us all pause. This is our singular chance to create a library that will serve the town for the next 5 decades. In survey after survey, the library is consistently rated as one of, if not the most valued assets of the community. This could be the signature accomplishment of your service on the council, or it could be a reminder of an opportunity lost. TSK Architects must quickly design the building based on the funds committed to this project. So now is the one and only chance you will have to add to the budget from general fund reserves to make the library the best possible cultural center of Sierra Madre. I look forward to talking about this more at your meeting in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, former Mayor Stockley. Rob, Mr. Stockley, Rob, I just have a question. Your request for agendizing this specifically, it would be for additional funds beyond the $10.5 million? Is that what you're asking for? Okay.
City funds invested in the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Jason Soda.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jason Soda, people of the City Council. Just wanted to bring up something that I think that affects us all is safety on the streets. It's a little crazy out there, I think, at the present time, and you know, I have family members. My wife has family members in law enforcement, and I have utmost respect for people in law enforcement. And I feel like they well, they definitely do put their life on the line every day, but I feel like I put my life on the line just crossing the street in front of my house. You know, the mountain trail in the Sierra Madre Boulevard is very busy, and I know that everybody has places to go, and people have a tendency to run the stop sign, to peel out and do donuts and get mad at each other for where they need to be if it gets in the way of where you need to be. And I know that this city is not big, and it's not very small, but I don't know how many police are on duty, but I think that if we took a little bit more time to maybe pay attention to these areas that cause some distress and lots of accidents. I had a car totaled the other day from somebody who ran the stop sign and plowed into one of my cars and totaled it and ran it underneath the other car that I own, and the kid did a good job of wiping out everything. But you know, there's a lot of action on the corner. There's a lot of action on all the corners, and I think if we maybe, you know, I know speed bumps are a bad word. You know, they say it's a thoroughfare, but I know lots of thoroughfares in Los Angeles that have speed bumps. You know, maybe we need flashing lights on the stop signs to deter. I know that when a driver is on the road and you see a blue light, everybody just like slows down. You know, it could be, we used to have a toy with a blue light on it. We'd put it right by the driveway, and people would just slow down. It was a toy. You know, so I think maybe could be a light, could be, you know, more officers on the corner maybe, you know, maybe allocating a little more time to these areas. You know, I've heard that they're going to put some more stop signs and stuff like that, but I think we need some physicality, you know what I mean? So I urge you guys to take this matter seriously and maybe put some attention there if possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. Madam City Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, city staff received one email on items not on the agenda. That email was forwarded to City Council for review and inspection and uploaded to the city's website for public access.
Thank you. Moving on. We have a few presentations. I think we have 4. The first one, it's generally my honor to present some of these presentations and proclamations as mayor, but I wanted to personally defer this one to Councilmember Lowe.
Thank you. It is my honor to recognize my sister-in-law, Melody Lomboy Lowe. She was the recipient of the Congresswoman of the Year for the city of Sierra Madre from Congresswoman Chu this last weekend, and it was a phenomenal event where women from all the different cities in our San Gabriel Valley and our congressional area were awarded the Congresswoman of the Year. And Melody Lomboy Lowe was nominated, and we're not sure by whom. It's a big mystery. But I just wanted to say a little bit of things. She was born and raised here in Sierra Madre. Her parents are right here in front, her sister, her family, all of our families here. When she was a child, there were 3 young girls in our town that had leukemia, and she was one of them. And they're all about 5 to 7 years old. 2 of them lost their lives when we were about 6 or 7 years old, and Melody was a miracle. She had gone through Make-A-Wish Foundation. She had already picked out her gravesite and her funeral session, and her parents were going through everything at City of Hope, and she's a miracle, and she lived. And she saw that as a sign to continue with her mission of helping others with cancer, especially children. So she met my brother at the Sierra Madre pool under the management of James Carlson, our management analyst, as well as other employees here that worked in town at the time. And my brother and her fell in love right away. My brother started following her oncologist at the City of Hope and interned with him, and he is now an oncologist because of his work with Melody and his desire to help others with cancer. Then they both went to college together, they graduated, and they have 3 amazing children, at which point she was told she probably would not be able to have children due to all the treatments. So she's an absolute miracle. She experienced cancer and passion for helping others by facing the struggles that she has. So she and her niece, my niece-in-law, Gracelyn, back here, They started the Luna Peak Foundation, and they both understood the fear that patients and their families go through when experiencing cancer. They wanted to give them a hope and some glimmer of hope and not just have the tragedies and the survival mentality. Instead of being survivors, they try to promote that you're a thriver, not just a survivor. And there's a big difference with that you don't just experience this and suffer from it, but you actually can thrive and move on to something better and live a miraculous life. As a result, the foundation created books and products that inspire and celebrate life. They focus on multicultural stories of cancer, grief, and community and survivors. In fact, Melody interviewed over 100 cancer survivors, and she and Gracelyn developed this amazing book that talks about each individual survivor's story. And they also wrote books for children. One's called Follow Me Cancer Free, with plans for a second book in the work. And what they do is they go to Children's Hospital and other pediatric cancer foundations and hospitals, and they donate their books to these kids, along with some other workbooks and some other tools to help them get through the treatments that they're going through. She's also volunteered with various workshops. She works with the Ronald McDonald Foundation and was a youth camp leader also with the, Camp Good Times. And so that's a camp that if anyone's interested also that has a child suffering from cancer, it's a free service to the whole family where the family gets to go to the camp and they actually experience what a regular childhood camp would be like with their family while they can still receive treatments. Despite facing her own health challenges and personal struggles, Melody has remained steadfast in her dedication to supporting those in need. She thanks her parents for keeping life as normal as possible, and when she was going through her cancer. She credits Gracelyn as the brains behind the Luna Peak Foundation, allowing Melody to shine in her creative mind. Melody's story is a reminder that we should all never give up, and despite the challenges we face, we can all make a positive impact on the world. She is truly inspiration and a role model to us, especially me. So please welcome Congresswoman of the Year for our Sierra Madre City, Melody Lomboy.
I wasn't sure if I was supposed to say something. Thank you guys for this honor. I have been very humbled this week by all the stories I've been hearing and hearing my own story back. And Christine's tears have like flowed onto my face now. But Sierra Madre is a very special town to me. Like Christine said, I grew up here, and with it being such a small community, everybody supported our family. And, food was delivered, people watched my siblings, people slept at the hospital with me. I was never alone. And the Sierra Madre pool was my second home. Actually my third, because I had my home, City of Hope, and Sierra Madre pool. And I grew up at that pool, and that's where I found my love of swimming that I still continue with. And just this community has always embraced me and continues to do so. So thank you very much. I just want to welcome all of our family. Like, we have a huge extended family. All of Sierra Madre here.
Thank you, Councilmember Lowe. Is Julia Batia here? Julia Batia? Oh, you are, right in front of me. Am I pronouncing that accurately? Okay. Maybe I don't. So each year, Congresswoman Judy Chu holds her annual congressional art competition for high school students living within her 28th congressional district. The competition provides an opportunity to encourage and recognize artistic talents of our country's youth. This year, one of the recipients attends LaSalle College Preparatory High School and is from the city of Sierra Madre. The student received a $100 scholarship and will have her artwork hung in Congresswoman Judy Chu's Claremont office. The student challenged herself this year by honing her skills with architectural design and exploring the use of colors of light. Over 3 months, the artist learned to manipulate the tone of the piece through her choice of colors and produced a stunning architectural artwork of the Colorado Street Bridge in Pasadena. She placed a special emphasis on the arch, which she highlighted in bright yellow with a clearly defined edge so that it was a focal point for the audience. The arch exemplifies the character of the bridge and shows its grace, balance, and integrity. Her work is titled Colorado Street Bridge. Please join me in congratulating Sierra Madre's own Julia Batia. I'll present this to you. So I'd like to present this certificate of recognition, the City of Sierra Madre, Julia Batia, in recognizing of your contribution to the Congressional Art Competition. The City Council extends its sincerest congratulations, presented this 9th day of May 2023 by the Sierra Madre City Council, Mayor Edward Garcia, Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Krebs, and council members Jean Goss, Christine Lowe, and Robert Parkhurst. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I feel so honored to have my piece recognized. My family immigrated to the United States when I was 7, and I've really grown to love this town and this city, this country really. And I just feel so privileged and grateful to live in a city that really appreciates the arts and supports its students. And so, yeah, thank you so much. I feel so grateful.
It's beautiful. Thank you. All right, do we have Chris Amino in the house? There he is, yeah. Say something. Sure, yeah. So this is our Director of Public Works, Chris Amino, if you don't know him. Longtime resident, great guy, and we're appreciative of all the work that you do and your staff. So this week, we'd like to recognize National Public Works Week, May 21st through 27th, 2023. And the proclamation states, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and the public health and enriched quality of life and well-being of the people of the city of Sierra Madre. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of the public works professionals who are directors, managers, engineers, and employees of all levels of government who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, community forests, and other assets essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children of the city of Sierra Madre to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their representative communities. And whereas the year 2023 marks the 63rd annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, be it now resolved, I, Edward Garcia, City of Sierra Madre Mayor, do hereby designate the week of May 21st through May 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals and to recognize the substantial contribution they make to protecting our national health, safety, and enrichment of life. Presented this 11th day of April 2023 by the City Council of the City of Sierra Madre, Mayor Edward Garcia, Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Krebs, Council members Jean Goss, Christine Lowe, and Robert Parkhurst. Thank you. If we could have, I know we have quite a few of you in the house, if you could stand up, come on up.
while they're coming up, I just want to thank the mayor and the members of the council and city staff for recognizing Public Works Week. This is the majority of our staff. These are the guys you see out there taking care of everything in the field for the city and for Public Works crew. So thank you for everything, guys.
All right, on to our final presentation for the meeting tonight. I'd like to invite our hard-working Senior Community Commission up to give us an update on transportation in the city.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and council members, city attorney, city manager, and staff. My name is Pat Holland, and my address is 101 Colony Drive. I'm a current member of the Senior Community Commission, and here tonight are the other members. Patricia Kroc, our current chair, who's looking forward to our hip replacement surgery next week. I have Marlene Enmark, who is the vice chair, who just had her hip replaced. We have Anita Thompson, who had another replacement last year. And we have Jackie Pergola, who's probably had many replacements, but we still call her the Energy Bunny. And I had a pacemaker 2 years ago, so we're all here. In spite of all these surgeries, we're still active in the Senior Community Commission. I would rather defer to Max Romero, who gave an outstanding speech regarding transportation. But we are here tonight to provide you information what the Senior Commission has done and tried to do regarding transportation for our senior community. We understand that students and other citizens of our community are affected by the lack of an effective transportation system. But our main concern is for the seniors, since we are the Senior Community Commission. A little background on how we got involved. In 2016, the Commission developed a long-range plan that consisted of 6 goals. And one of those goals was to provide effective transportation to our community. In late 2017, with the change of the commission makeup, certain commissioners were tasked for developing plans and recommendations for the implementation. So Anita Thompson and I decided to do a ride-along on the Gateway Coach and get firsthand knowledge of what the passengers thought and what the driver of the coach thought. We did that on March 7th, 2018. And Commissioner Joanne Williams did the same thing the day after, and she submitted her observations and recommendations. So while we were on the coach, we introduced ourselves to the riders and to the driver and asked them to give us recommendations and suggestions on how to improve the transportation issues in our city. They provided us with many suggestions, and most of them were excellent, but here are just a few. I'm saying a few. The signage is outdated. The route needs to be adjusted. The time frames need to be adjusted. There is no Saturday or Sunday service. There are no stops at food or clothing banks for seniors. There are no stops at Gold Line stations. And some have doctor appointments outside of the route. And again, these are just a few. We discussed all of their suggestions and recommendations at our commission meeting in April of 2018. We requested that the First Transit and Mr. Carlson be at our June 18th meeting, but they were not available. At our July 2018 meeting, Heidi from First Transit was ill and couldn't make it, and Mr. Carlson couldn't make it either. At our September 2018 meeting, the Commission continued the issue to October because of unavailability. In October 2018, Heidi from First Transit did appear, and she gave we gave her all the information we had, and she indicated that some of the suggestions could probably be done, but she would have to get approval from First Transit and the city. So in November of 2018, Mr. Carlson did appear, and we also presented him with the suggestions. His response is in the minutes of our meeting on November 1st of 2018. He recommended that if we wanted to have a subcommittee to look into these issues, the Department of Public Works and the Community Service Commission should also be represented. So in January 2019, Commissioner Thompson and I attended the Community Service Commission meeting to explain what needed to be and requested their participation in the subcommittee. In February of 2019, we were informed that the Community Service Commission would appoint a member. Thank you. In March of 2019, we were informed that Mr. Benskami was selected to be part of the subcommittee. It took 3 months before we were able to get an answer. Commissioner Thompson and Kroc were selected to be members of the subcommittee from the Senior Commission, and Lauren Hines is a coordinator along with Mr. Carlson. On September 12, 2019, 6 months later, the subcommittee and Mr. Carlson the subcommittee met and Mr. Carlson provided them with spreadsheets regarding the ridership and costs. The subcommittee met a couple times after that with not much being accomplished. On more than one occasion, the meetings were canceled mainly because a member could not attend. But it's amazing that members of the Senior Community Commission were always available. On February 6, 2020, Lauren Hines met with First Transit regarding the suggestions that had been previously made, and First Transit indicated that they would submit a proposal to Public Works to see if they could be implemented. Frequently, the Senior Commission members would ask for an update at our meetings, but it didn't happen until November 2022, almost 2 years later. Even with the COVID interruptions from 2020 to 21, there appeared that nothing was being done regarding our issues. November 2022, Mr. Carlson attended our meeting and gave us an update on what was happening with transportation, and he was going to work with Metro regarding a contract. So the Senior Commission decided at that time to put off any more subcommittee meetings or any other suggestions until Mr. Carlson and the city finalized the contract. None of us were available to attend the City Council meeting on April 25th. When we read in the Mountain View News the weekend of April 29th, we couldn't believe what we were reading about transportation issues. We were frustrated and dismayed that nothing had been done since we started trying to implement the Long-Range Plan number 4, Transportation for Senior Community, from 2018 to 2023. Our seniors, students, and citizenry deserve much better. We hope some action will be taken in the very near future to provide transportation to all of us. And by the way, Mr. Marrero did a fantastic job, and he's 16 years old. I do want to mention there is a yard sale on a lighter note. June 17th, 2023, and it'll be held over by Memorial Park. And if you want to sign up for the yard sale, you need to get in touch with Lauren Hines at the Senior Center. And whoever is responsible for finally getting a television for the Senior Center after 7 months of total frustration on our part, we thank you, whoever it was. Jackie Pergola would like to say a few words also.
Could I ask?
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Goss has a question for you.
Good to see you, Commissioner Holland, and you have my attention. You said some actions you'd like to see. Could you give us one or two teases with your highest priority?
Well, they're all the priorities that the ridership and the driver told us about.
Right.
That the ones that we really talked about as a commission member, there was about 3 of them. 1, no Saturday and Sunday service. 2, the hours are ridiculous. 3, that when people need to go outside of the route, if they need to go to City of Hope, if they need to go to a doctor's office over in the Arcadia area, or in the Pasadena area, there's nothing there for the route for our citizens to get there, especially the senior citizens. And most of them, well, I shouldn't say most of them, a lot of them don't drive, and they have no way of getting to those places except in that narrow window of time that's allotted for the gateway coach. I thought Micro Metro was going to work out fine, and I've tried it before, and it seemed to be fine with me, just to test it, and it tested okay for me. But I don't know, I don't use those methods of transportation that much because I can still drive. Hopefully.
Ms. Pergola? Commissioner Pergola, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mayor Garcia and City Council members, for allowing us this time. Our frustration is beyond anything. Our Senior Commission was formed many years ago to help our senior community live a healthful, productive life in our wonderful city. And there are many programs that make that happen. My first time on the commission was in the year 2014 to 2016. At that time, we were beginning to propose help for the transportation issue. I have found that nothing has progressed forward in solving the transportation issues, and this is 2022 when I'm back on the commission. I don't know about you, but that is pretty embarrassing. You and your predecessors listen to us, then promptly forget about us is what we're thinking. We all know you have a lot on your plate, and it's a pretty big plate. But the Senior Commission thinks there should be some room on that plate for our seniors. We are so frustrated. We don't know who else to go to. If you can't help us, who can? So please, let's move forward with this, and we will try to help as much as we can. And if we could get a committee together to work on this and progress at a little bit better pace, we would sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else from the commission? All right, thank you. Was it our last meeting? We discussed this, and we do want to have an ad hoc committee put together once again with senior community commissioners, youth from our city, as well as the Community Services Commission. So that is a goal to figure out how to go forward with this issue. So thank you. Yes,
Mr. Mayor, I volunteered to be on that
You did,
committee,
yes.
and I intend to help expedite this.
Fantastic.
As a consequence of this testimony.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilmember Goss. Okay. Any questions for our commission while they're here regarding this issue? Comments? No? Oh, yeah, please.
So, I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about is we have a number of islands of efforts that we're working on, and I'll say this when we get to future items on the agenda, but I think we really need to put some thought into kind of next steps on this, because I do think, we're seeing it from the youth, we're seeing it from the seniors, we're seeing it from people that have limited mobility. I mean, this is really a significant issue, and so thank you, Councilmember Goss, for taking the time on it, and I will lend whatever support I can to that to make it happen. I'm sure other committee members or council members will as well. But yeah, I think they've got all of our attention, I think.
Thank you. All right, moving on to consent calendar. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council is being asked to consider a number of items on the consent calendar. There are three. The first is Resolution 23-32, approving certain demands. It is recommended that the City Council approve Resolution 23-32. The second is consideration of Resolution 23-33, adopting a list of projects for the fiscal year 2023-2024, funded by SB1, the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. It is recommended that the City Council approve Resolution 23-33. And lastly, for Council's consideration is consent item C. It's consideration to reject all bids for the Sierra Madre Boulevard Water Main Replacement and Street Improvement Project as specified under number ST82302. That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And, you know, I'd like to go out of order here. It was, since we're not really on the consent yet, it's my understanding that Mr. Lomboy had a song for us, and I want to, while we still have some of the family here, I'd love to hear that.
I'm so sorry.
A special song for Sierra Madre. This one tune I borrowed from Kuili from Hawaii back in the 60s, so here it is. I am going to a place in the valley in Sierra Madre, where the mountain you will find me in Sierra Madre. They say that people there are friendly, and I agree. I know Sierra Madre is the only place for me. That's where you'll find me, right by the hillside, watching the moonlight, the twinkling starlight, the morning sunset, the golden sunrise in Sierra Madre.
Bravo.
Thank you, Papa Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Lomboy. I have chills. That was beautiful. And tears, yes. 2 meetings in a row where I teared up. Okay. All right, thank you, Madam City Clerk, for going out of order.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
We didn't want to keep you even longer, though.
70 years. Oh, wow.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, City Clerk. I kind of lost my place there. No, I'm hopefully we can get that recording maybe played over our intros council meetings, or that's got to be the official song of Sierra Madre, and it's beautiful. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to repeat my presentation, but my
Please.
presentation was completed if you'd like to.
No, I think we know the three things that are on the calendar. We'll just go through and ask questions. So I'll go one by one. Does the council have any questions on consent item A, our warrants? No questions. Consent item B, using the SB1 funds?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
I don't have a question. I think I just have a correction. I think there's a misspelling in the proclamation, or the resolution for the streets. I think it's Allegria, right? Not Algeria. I didn't mind it. I knew what it meant in the staff report, but I thought before we sign the
the resolution.
And submit the report to the state. I thought that should be updated, so just a comment.
Okay, thank you. So that should be changed.
Just jumped out.
Anything else on item B? Item C. Any questions, comments? Okay. All right, let's open.
So I do have a comment. but-
Yeah, let's leave that
Okay,
for after.
just as long as we're, great.
I'm okay with a short comment, but let's open this up to public comments. Madam City Clerk, did we receive any comment cards for the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, we did not receive comment cards, nor did we receive any emails on this items.
Thank you. All right, back to the council for comments.
So item A, I'm thrilled to see we're buying a Chevy Bolt.
Yes.
Only one, but one. So thank you. Two. Oh, even better. Thank you. I missed that. Two. Thank you for correcting me. So thank you to the city staff for electrifying our city.
Yeah, and there's, if you noticed, it's a 2020, so it's depreciated. So we were, that's great. I love seeing that we're buying, letting somebody else enjoy the big depreciation for the first couple of years. And yeah, there was a lot of things on there we had to spend money on, but it's nice to know that our current public safety building was repainted. And if you haven't seen it, please go out and take a look. But there was a lot of good things happening within the city. Okay, with that, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar with the modification of the word Algeria to Allegria?
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar carries unanimously. Thank you. Right. Moving right along. Okay, we're having our first discussion item regarding the conditional use permit at Alverno Heights Academy. Do we have a presentation on that?
Mayor, the city attorney will present.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, on April 11th, the City Council closed its public hearing on the Alverno matter, and it heard from the appellants and Alverno and asked both parties to draft mutually acceptable conditions. Then the City Council voted to direct the City Attorney, myself, to incorporate those mutually acceptable edits into a revised resolution and to bring it before this body. I reviewed the April 11th meeting video and drafted a revised resolution. I then circulated that draft to the attorneys for both parties, who provided their edits. I accepted those edits I felt were supported by the record, and I rejected those edits that I felt were not supported by the record. The parties did, however, point out two ambiguities in the conditions of approval that are reflected in the two versions of the resolutions presented before you tonight. And so, one of these versions, both versions should be identical, except for the highlighted provisions. There are two highlights. The first highlight is regarding Planning and Development Department Condition 6A4. Now I'll draw your attention, and they're not labeled, unfortunately they're not labeled appellant or Alverno version, so you're not going to know, but
Actually, there is a header on the versions that we received that have appellant and AHA. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So if you look at 6A4,
on the appellant version?
On the appellant version, correct. It talks about, so 6 is about, so condition 6 of the Planning and Community Preservation Department is about the phasing plan. And 6A reads, the applicant shall construct 2 sports courts as shown on Exhibit B. The court shall be completed within 15 months of the approval of this conditional use permit / entitlement. Time extensions may be granted in the city manager's discretion due to And number 1 is occurrences of force majeure. 2 are delays in obtaining a government agency permit that's required for construction of the sports court, but only if delay is caused by the government agency. 3 is an extension cannot be granted based on the applicant's failure to obtain funding. And 4 is the one at issue. So this is the appellant's attorney's language. It reads, the applicant may not request an extension under this permit condition. Rather, the consideration of an extension under this subsection is made on the city manager's own volition. So that was language added by the appellant's attorney. That language is not reflected in the Alverno version. The Alverno version contemplates an application to the city manager, and for the city manager to then determine whether or not to grant that extension based on Alverno's application.
So I have a question on that, if that's okay. So section 6A 1 through 3, how does that play with 4? Are they completely independent? Because the language isn't super clear. I want to have an understanding if they're 4 independent phrases or conditions, or if number 4 contemplates 1, 2, and 3.
Right. I think the way it should probably read is 6A, and it should be 1, 2, 3, and then 4. It shouldn't be 4. It should really be a continuation of 6A.
Frankly, so should 3.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Right. Same thing.
Because 1 and 2 are really the exceptions, and 3 and 4 discuss what an extension is and how it can be applied for.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting, but as these things pop in my head, I want to make sure we get these answered. If we have any other questions on this one topic right now, we'll have more opportunity for questions, but
I guess my only question is, based on your re-review of the meeting and my recollection, this was not a topic of discussion at our April 11th. This particular procedure for the extension, I don't believe was discussed as part of the April 11th discussion. Is that consistent with your review of the meeting?
That's correct. So, like I said, the appellant as well as Alverno submitted a number of different edits, and if I felt that it was inconsistent with the record, I struck it. If I felt it was consistent with the record, I kept it in. If it's frankly just not clear based on the video, or if I didn't see it discussed in particular, then I left it in for the city council to make that determination.
Okay, thank you.
from my recollection, and this is a question, I think what we stated was the force majeure or the agency being the delay, then that would trigger the option for an extension. Is this contemplating the city manager affirmatively going out and say an extension is granted, or it doesn't sound like it's contemplating Alverno coming to the city and saying, we need an extension because of this thing happened, or you guys were a little slow, and then it goes to the city manager's discretion.
Right. When I reviewed the video and I drafted this section without for, what I had contemplated at the time was the Alverno applying to the city manager based on either 1 or 2, and then the city manager in his discretion making that determination for himself within his discretion. But admittedly, that was an assumption on my part. The actual process of how this is going to come before the city manager for him to make that determination is unclear. If council likes the way 4 is written, I would encourage council to work with the Alverno attorney to figure out, in terms of process, how this would actually work. How would the city manager be apprised to make a determination regarding whether or not to grant an extension? The city manager can't be the one to go out to the field and make that assessment himself, so there has to be some mechanism in place.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. On this one issue, do we have any questions right now?
I've got discussion, but not questions.
Yeah, let's let the city attorney finish his presentation.
Okay, so there were 2 issues. That's the first. The second issue is in Planning and Development Department Condition 11B. And I'm just turning to 11B in both my versions here. So looking first at the appellant version. 11B reads, for a period of 15 months from the date of approval of this conditional use, permit/entitlement, subject to any extension granted by the city manager under Planning and Community Preservation Department Condition number 6A, which is what we just discussed, and subject to Condition 11F, play, recess, and sporting activities during play or recess on days where the applicant's landscape contractor makes a determination that the multi-purpose sports field is unsafe for those uses to occur on the multi-purpose sports field due to weather conditions resulting from rain or flooding. So basically what this is saying is for the initial 15 months, the Alverno can use the Michelinda parking lot for play, recess, or sporting activities during play or recess. But then after that 15-month period, once those two new sports courts are completed, the Michelinda parking lot can no longer be used, regardless of whether or not there's the multi-purpose field is unsafe due to weather conditions resulting from rain or flooding. So it's the appellant's position that once those two sports courts are built, no longer can you use Michelinda parking lot for this specific condition. You can still use it for vehicle parking, ancillary outdoor activities, public safety demonstrations, occasional religious and liturgical uses, but not for this weather condition. Now, if you look at Alverno's version, 11B reads, play, recess, or physical education only where the applicant's landscape contractor makes a determination that the multi-purpose sports field is unsafe for those uses due to weather conditions, including but not limited to rain, flooding, or other safety conditions that make it unsafe for children to engage in the listed uses. Under such circumstances, the school shall maximize use of the sporting courts first and only the necessary number of students on Michelinda lot to comply with safety protocols. So, under Alverno's version, regardless of whether the 15 months has elapsed, so it's going to be for the entire life of the conditional use permit, this exception, using the Michelinda parking lot during a rain event or when it's determined to be unsafe, the multi-purpose sports field is determined to be unsafe, the students can use it for play and recess or physical education during the entire life of the conditional use permit. So that's the main difference between these two, and you'll see there's another highlighted section at the bottom. That basically just reflects the changes made in 11B. So really 11B is what should be the focus of this council's consideration.
And so, go ahead.
So I guess that's the part that confuses me, because I see that like the item below the lettered sections really is what drives the items above, right? That to me is it's saying what is allowed and what is allowed after 15 months. At some level in I think it's the appellant's version, you've got 15 months and 15 months, right? You've got B, it says for a period of 15 months, and then at the bottom it says after a period of 15 months. And then in the Alverno version, you know, it says after a period of 15 months, which is similar, but it has different lettering on it. So at some level, is it correct to assume that really the driving force of this, the legally binding force of it, is that paragraph below versus the B? Because to me, that's the one that really says after 15 months, this is what you're allowed to do.
Well, I think this introductory clause in 11 is what really sets the tone. 11, it starts with the line, there shall be no sound amplification devices used for Michelinda parking lot at any time, except for emergency preparedness. It says use of the Michelinda parking lot will be limited exclusively to the following. So that's really what sets the tone. Every A through G are basically what's allowed. at the Mitchellinda parking lot. And then the period of 15 months, that's really a continuation of use of the Mitchellinda parking lot will be limited exclusively to the following uses.
Right, to me, that's the 15 months, that's the hammer at the end of the 15 months, and that includes multiple things in it. So it not just includes B, but it includes,
A through G.
A through E.
Yeah, A through E.
A through E, apologies.
Thank you, right, and so, to me, like, I'm getting into discussion, but, so I should stop, but to me, like, we're focusing on B, and I'm wondering, from a legal perspective, why we don't focus on the paragraph before, because that, as was pointed out, covers A through E versus just B.
May I respond? I think that we're focusing on B is because B is the place where the parties differ in terms of how they want this treated, and then whatever we sort of determine on the substance of that disagreement will drive how that following paragraph reads. Because right now, basically, the paragraph at the end restates the fact that after 15 months, you know, in the Alverno version, A through E shall be allowed, you know, through the life of the permit, and in the appellant's version, A, C, D, and E will last for the life of the permit. So it's really just a matter of whether this B use, you know, this sort of backup use, if there's a weather event that's caused the field to be unusable, whether or not that ends once, you know, at the end of the 15 months, or whether that goes on. So I think that's the crux of what we need to decide, and then I think the drafting follows from there.
Okay, I'd like to discuss that, and just to work it out, but I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate that.
And Mr. City Attorney, from your review of it's not the transcript, but the video, I know you've already stated this. This is where there may have been ambiguity from the council regarding these issues. Otherwise, it would be in black and not highlighted. So, thankfully, due to public comment, so there were links to timestamps, and I was able to review this, and kind of really wasn't clear from my perspective either. I know we had a spirit of some issues, but I think wasn't ultimately clear. Because these questions the minutia of this wasn't really raised at, 2 in the morning. So, yeah, was that your, how you saw it when you reviewed the videos?
Yes, so admittedly, I have drafted it one way, but then after talking to the parties, I can see support for both of their interpretations. And I felt the only right thing to do is not for the city attorney to make that discretionary decision, but to leave that to the city council.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other?
It's just those two council members.
Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We're not reopening the public hearing. That's done, right? But what I do want to hear is from both the appellant and the applicant on these two issues. Let's just keep it to these two issues. We're not doing another de novo hearing. We've already litigated all that. We're not going to relitigate this stuff. So I would like to hear if you have any prepared comments or guidance to your thoughts regarding these issues, I'd like to hear it. At that point, again, I'm not opening a public hearing up, but I would like to open it up to public comment. Anybody would like to make public comment on these issues, I would like to hear that as well, and then we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Fair?
Can we just ask for brevity in this? We're really close, it's minor. Let's try to be really focused tonight.
That's why I'm trying to limit to these
I support that.
Including public comment.
Yeah, including the public comment. If you could keep it to these two items, that would be super helpful, but I'm sure we'll have some questions. So that being said, I'd like to invite the appellant up first, if you have anything to bring to us. Thank you.
Good evening, council. It's good to be back. Hopefully we can resolve this. So let me start by, I guess, addressing the issue with 6A. I think that the 6A4 was clearly articulated at the April 11th meeting. In my letter submitted on May 4th, I cited to a portion of the record that occurred at hour 7, so that's going to be 7 hours, 1 minute, 19 seconds to 7 hours, 2 minutes, 9 seconds. And in that portion of the video, one of the council members, Mayor Pro Tem Krebs, was discussing the operation, and I thought this was just elegantly put during that meeting. She was discussing the operation of the extension, and there was a discussion about it covering force majeure, agency delay, as determined by the city manager, and it was not something that was going to be requested by the applicant. And then Mayor Garcia concurred, stating that those reasons are reasonable. After I got the iteration of the resolution from the city attorney, I looked at permit condition 6A. I didn't see that language in there, so I made that recommendation. Hey, this is something that was discussed at that April 11th meeting. I think it needs to be in there. And, you know, I think the reason it needs to be in there is twofold. First, it prevents there's no notice mechanism in 6A. There's no appeal mechanism in 6A. That's sort of on purpose, okay? Because the city manager is supposed to be making this call. And if we permit the applicant to make a request for an extension without any notice to the public, without any right to for the public to appeal that ultimate decision from the city manager, then you are sanctioning a backdoor process, back channel process, where the request can go in to the city manager and nobody knows. Nobody knows. So that is the reason I think 6A4 makes sense.
If I may, so I just want to understand, how do you envision this process working? The city manager actively going to the grounds and him coming to a determination on his own? I want to make sure I understand what you're asking here.
So if the permit condition were limited to just delay, I don't think it would be an issue because it's city delay, right? So theoretically, the academy's moving through its permit process. It's trying to get the approval from the city. The city, for some reason, has a delay. The city manager knows that that's going on because it's a city act that's causing the delay. There's no need for an inspection, but since we have force majeure, you know, one idea may be to use components of Sierra Madre Municipal Code 17.60.170. That's the extension ordinance, which I also have a problem with because I can get to that in a second. But perhaps the council can use components of that and put that into the permit. So, you know, that provides notice. It provides a hearing, and I'm talking about 17.6.170. So you have those protections, and then, you know, that ultimate decision could be appealed just like any other decision. There are some components of that ordinance that I do not think make sense here because, as stated in my letter, that ordinance has a good cause standard. I think the council has intentionally moved away from that for good reason in this permit condition, only limiting it to force majeure and city delay. So
Can I ask a question? So in your comments back to City of Attorney about Ordinance 176170, did you provide that specific language along with your recommendations and your concerns with the problems that you've got? Is it yes or no? Please just, if you could just for tonight, just can you answer yes or no?
No, I didn't provide the direct quote from 17670. That's correct. There was a discussion about the components of that ordinance and how it would impact the extension under 6A. So hopefully that answers your question, council member.
Okay.
Okay. So that is, yeah, so I think that would be a solution, potentially, to the problem.
Can before you move on, can I point out that I believe, and I recall this from the discussion on the 11th, the delay in obtaining a government agency permit was specifically not delays in obtaining a City of Sierra Madre permit, because there are other agency permits involved for which the city manager would not have knowledge of the status, where the city is not going to apply on behalf of Alverno for those permits. And so we would have no way of knowing, city manager would have no way of knowing if those have been delayed.
That's true. I'll concede that as well. That's true.
So what I had in mind during this time, the spirit of it was, and as you recall, and I read a lot of public comment quoting me on this, I'm not trying to require Alverno Heights build a sports court, right? This is, to me, this was kind of, if and when this happens within the 15 months, let's say it happens right away, they get the funding and they start building this, and during the process something happens. It was for me, it was, if in the process something happens, they do have an opportunity to extend it as a gesture of good faith, that these sports courts are getting built, because they do. I felt as though the verbiage that was given to us was that they want to build this because it'd be good for their kids, it would be good for recruitment of new students, it'd be good for everybody. It'd be good for your clients. So in my mind, that's what I had, because I'm not requiring it to be built. I didn't want that as part of the component. My thought was, but if they do go forward quickly and there is some type of delay in building the sports courts, then there could be, outside of their control, there could be something built in kind of as a carrot to make sure it does get built without penalizing them for doing a good act, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. Was that your understanding of how we felt as a council, or?
Yes,
Okay.
and so I think, we're in agreement that, there was a extension mechanism that the council was in consensus on. I just think that the issue here is, well, how does that operate in practice? How's it going to work? So this is something I have to talk to my clients about. I think the best compromise would be taking aspects of 17.60.170 and incorporating it into the permit.
Can I ask a procedural question? For our discussion, Mr. City Manager, could we actually have the ordinance that Mr. Sanders is referencing put onto the, so when we get to, so we'll have time, because I know that Alverno's going to make a presentation. By the time we get to discussion, could we maybe put that up on the screen? Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to cut that.
So I think that is all I have on 6A. There are some, I do have some other reservations about leaving the condition as, not including it at all, or just omitting if you have my my May 4th letter, there's a red highlighted portion at the bottom of page 2. I think if we're not going to incorporate aspects of the ordinance I referenced, and it's just going to be this permit, then I think it needs to make clear that that ordinance doesn't apply. Because what I envision happening, okay, is we have this 6A4 the way I want it, and then the academy uses 17.60.170 to try to get an extension, because it's talking about extensions of conditional use permits. Now, in my letter, I was trying to advocate for the position that we're dealing, so CUPs are an entitlement. They're different than a permit condition, which is really more like a mitigation measure. So I don't think 17.60 60.170, I don't think the academy would be able to request an extension under that provision, but I have no idea what the deciding body would, how they would come down on that. So that is why I wanted that extra language in there, but I think that may be a moot point if we are talking about essentially taking parts of that ordinance and inserting it into the permit condition. So I think that's all I have to say on 6A. Going to 11B.
So I want to make sure I understand what you just said. You're within the appellant's version that we have.
Right.
That red section, you would like to add it to 6.
Yes.
You would want that to actually read as though, okay, I understand.
Yes. And the reason I put that in is because during the lead up to this hearing, the applicant's attorney and I were trying to work it out, and those discussions led me to believe that they thought they had a constitutional right to request an extension. I disagree. So, you know, I wanted that kind of protection in there for that reason.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask you again quickly? I don't know if I got the definitive answer. So if you don't want the applicant to request the extension, you expect our city staff and management to monitor all of this, and then they would have to come to them and say, this is what's going on, would you like an extension?
So I think the response to that is, I recognize that, you know, and with force majeure and delays from other agencies, you know, that's going to require the city manager to go out and figure out what's going on. So that's how it's currently, that's how 6A4 is currently written. That's the burden it would put on the city manager. I think if the council doesn't like that, then, you know, I'm not sure how much of a burden it is. Okay, so that could be a phone call in terms of reaching out to the academy, or I think the city manager should know what agencies need approval, because that's part of the staff report that's prepared. So I don't think it's a huge burden, but if the council believes that that's a burden, then one solution to that would be incorporating some language from 17.60.170 into 6A4, and then you could have a request from the applicant, but everyone knows, because there's going to be notice, and then there's a hearing. So that could be a solution. I just, from my recollection of the April 11th meeting, I thought the council was trying to avoid all of that, you know, extra expense just to deal with an extension of a permit condition.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. If I may, Mr. City Attorney, do we have any planning? Anyone from planning? Vincent's here. So in our other CUPs where there's a force majeure provision, is that usually, when that gets triggered, is there a public hearing for that, or is that not something we generally do?
We generally don't include force majeure provisions in conditional use permits. That's pretty unusual. It's included in contracts, and in the contract case, when it's in there and it's triggered, it's the burdens on the other party to let the contracting party know that, hey, we want a force majeure extension.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
So in terms of 11B, I'm not sure the best way to approach this. You know, in my letter, I essentially went through the recorded meeting online, cited the portions that I felt accurately reflected the council's intent, and so just as a summary, I think the initial proposal that there would be a permanent suspension of activity on the lot came from Councilmember Goss. That happened 2 hours, 11 minutes, 17 seconds, roughly, okay? And then that was picked up by other council members, and it was kind of battered around in discussion. And then around 6 hours, 36 minutes, 49 seconds, city attorney proposed placing end dates after certain enumerated activities under permit condition 11. I suggested end dates be placed after sports, PE, recess. The mayor said that makes sense. And then immediately thereafter, at this, again, this is 6 hours, 40 minutes, 24 seconds, around there, the council for the academy said, well, those end dates for us should be 15 months. So I don't know how much more clear that could be on the record. At the very end of the proceeding, this is 7 hours, 56 minutes, 47 seconds. I once again made clear that all types of recess, PE, sporting activity will be prohibited on the Michelin parking lot after 15 months. At that time, the city attorney said, I'll make that clear. I mean,
Was that when you and Ms. Sultani were both at the lectern in the microphone during that time?
That exchange where we were both at the lectern, I believe, happened at 6 hours, 40 minutes, 24 seconds.
Okay.
And then subsequently, towards the end of the meeting, that's where I, once again, tried to be clear about what I thought the council was, the consensus was. So, that's the evidence. I think the record's clear, and I think where my clients feel hard done by is that in light of that evidence, after the resolution came out from the city attorney, I pointed out, this doesn't really match the intent. Go back and please go back and look at the citations. There was a back and forth with the applicant's attorney. The city attorney polled the council, came back and said, well, the majority agrees with the appellant's interpretation. And so I think after those two things, the record and the poll, I don't see how, so you guys have spoken on this issue. The issue is, should weather event recess be extended last the life of the permit? I think you guys have spoken twice, and quite frankly, I cannot see why the resolution doesn't reflect that. I think it's error for the resolution not to reflect the intent of the council on that point. So, because the hearing's closed, I'm not sure, and I pointed this out in my letter, I think any attempt to change the council's mind on that, any change of course by the council could be an ultra-virus act, and it could be a failure to proceed in a manner required by law, because you've essentially already voted on it, and you've come to a consensus on it. And so now the direction to the city attorney was draft a resolution that matches our intent. And so I think our version of 11B needs to be the version because it matches your intent. So I think that's all I really want to say about 11B. I think some of the arguments that are made by the applicant after the last hearing in terms of Title 22, this is dealing with child care centers, the California Department of Social Services, none of these regulations apply. Okay, none of them. They're just grasping. None of these apply. You don't have to, you can disregard them. So I think the point here is that after they build the 2 sports courts, there's more than enough room to accommodate staggered recess. And I think that's the whole point of the weather exception, right? So the weather exception was acknowledging that, hey, you don't have the sports courts built yet. So we're going to allow you to use the Michelin parking lot when it's on days when the field's flooded because you don't have the sports courts yet. But after you get the sports courts, there's no, the whole rationale for that exception vanishes in my mind. So That's my stance on 11B. So the last point here is 11C. I know you guys said at the outset that you're not considering 11C. This is having to deal with ancillary outdoor activities. I don't think the way it's currently drafted matches the intent, because the intent that is memorialized on the record, because the language about ancillary outdoor activities really is vague, could mean anything. I think the parties all know kind of what it means, but to be clear, it's a small change. Okay, so if the academy really is concerned about students traversing the lot to get to different places, then that's what it should say. There's no need for the ambiguous language. So that's all I have to say on 11C. If you have any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Do we have any questions for Mr. Sanders before we hear from Attorney Soltani? No? Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, thank you for this opportunity. First, I want to say that presentation from Melody really warmed my heart. City of Hope was our second home for a period of 4 years. My nephew was treated there, and he's in his third year of college at Cornell right now. So the story warmed my heart, and I actually went and introduced myself to her. So thank you for that. That really put me in a good mood. I'm going to stick to the 2 points that you have raised. On condition 6, I'm out of words. I really don't know what to say. The U.S. Constitution, the California Constitution, ample case law interpreting the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and to the California Constitution state that a party should have, at any time, the right to petition government. So in my 20 years of practicing law, I've never seen a condition of approval on a permit or an entitlement land use application that any city we've worked with has a condition that says a party may not seek something from their government. That is absolutely unconstitutional, and we would sue the city over that, as much as I hate to say, because I feel passionate about constitutional issues and First Amendment rights. Everyone in the United States of America should have the right to petition their government, and I'm happy to read you the language of the Constitution if Mr. Sanders is not familiar with it, because it is very critical for this to be in the record. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says that there shall be no laws respecting an establishment of religion, blah, 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 or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people to rightfully assemble or petition the government for a redress. Article 1, Section 3 of the California Constitution says, the people have the right to instruct their representatives, petition government for redress. There is ample case law that interpret that. There is zoning cases that say we start with the premise that the rights to assemble peacefully to petition or redress grievance are among the most precious of the liberties safeguarded by the Bill of Rights. I can put the cite cases into the record. I've emailed them to your attorney. I'm not going to waste the council to read the cases. So on that condition, and let's talk about after the fact drafting. I mean, Mr. Sanders is speaking from the both sides of his mouth. On the one hand, he says, you're limited to the hearing, but when we got the red line of his version of the resolution back, I think your attorney can attest to this. There was more than 10, 11, 12 changes probably that were not reflective of discussions of this council. But I sat with my client. I said, we really cannot go back to the council. We can't bother them. Anything that there was anything I could grasp at the record to say that must have been the intent of the council, I let go of. My only change was a typo that I caught that was left over from the Planning Commission resolution that had to be corrected, and this 11B that became a big issue in this section 6. So if I'm hearing Mr. Sanders right now, his main concern is that the city manager may make a decision and his client may not find out about it and they wouldn't have a right to appeal that decision. It's really simple. Leave the language as is and just put an appeal, a noticing requirement that once the city manager makes a decision, Alverno has an obligation to put the neighbors on notice of that decision. The neighbors then have 30 days to appeal the city manager's decision to the planning commission. You could do that. And we would be okay with it. I don't think it's ideal. I think in a lot of the conditions, CUPs that I work on for my client, small issues, we just leave administrative decisions. We allow city managers or department heads to make those small decisions. This is you're limiting your city manager's discretion to only make decisions on two issues, force majeure and a governmental entity delay. Now, again, the council could choose to add language that says, and the city manager has no discretion to grant any extensions based on any other reason beyond these two enumerated reasons. We'd be okay with that too, because you do have discretion to limit what circumstances your city manager can make decisions on these issues. However, I caution you, you do not have any discretion to limit my client's right to a public process. That would be very bad policy, and it would be very unprecedented. So on that point, that's all I have to say. I'm open to modifications to address Mr. Sanders' concern, whether it's through an appeal of the city manager's decision to the planning commission or clarifying that the city manager's discretion is limited to force majeure and the governmental agency delays and nothing beyond that. So that's that. Does the council have any questions for me on this point before I move on to the next point? On point 11, condition 11B. I agree with you, Mayor. We were exhausted. I mean, when I was reading the conditions into the record, and I attached a version of the transcripts that shows that I was trying to clarify that we would want this exemption for situations after the 15 months. We still want the exemption for field conditions. And we even had a debate about what's field condition. And I was saying it's got to be more than just weather related. And we talked about, now I forget the term. What was the term, Mr. Farfsing?
Aeration.
Aeration. Thank you. And Mr. Sanders said, well, why don't we just say any other field condition or any other conditions that render the field unsafe? And I was okay with that. I said that makes sense. There has to be an element of it being unsafe. So we modified that language. And so I think the record's clear that the council made that exemptions. But again, I reached out to Mr. Sanders when your city attorney said he believed the record was inconclusive on that issue. I offered the compromise that I'm offering the council tonight. I said, even though I believe the record that night set forth a situation where even after the 15-month, when there is a field condition as determined by an independent contractor, we could use Michelle Andalot, we're willing to limit it to only for the number of the students that need to migrate. And I sent a letter yesterday. We go over the math, and I'll just read it into the record just in case the council hasn't had a chance to look at it. The first thing I want to put in perspective is the number of days we're talking about now. We're talking about, on the average, about 30 days out of the year, and we're talking about less than an hour a day during those 30 days. So this is not by far like a big issue. There's only, we put the averages between 2021 and 2023 for field maintenance and rain conditions, and that's in my letter. So it's about 30 days a year. Now, the sports...
Ms. Altani, is that 30 calendar days or 30 school days?
School days.
Thank you.
Because we had, in between 2021, 2022, there was 19 days of rain. I'm sorry, 19 days. It was 11 days of rain and 8 days for the aeration, the field maintenance. 2022, 2023, it was 41 days altogether, 33 days for rain and 8 days for field maintenance. So I'm saying the average, and last year was an abnormal year for rain. So your worst case scenario is 33 days for rain, or sorry, 33 days for rain and then 8 days for maintenance. The reason we need the Michelin lot is actually for master planning. What's before you is a master plan. The whole purpose of it is to think through the issues, what can happen in the future, and for you to be able to address it so your staff don't have to come back. So right now, if we had the 2 sporting lots, we would have potentially enough room for the children to be there if there's a field condition. But if we expand, there's going to be about 40 to 50 students that would have to go elsewhere. That's why I drafted the condition, the proposed condition, or the compromise condition, as I call it, and tried to get Mr. Sanders to understand what I was trying to say, but he was adamant about not accepting any compromises on the issue. So the sporting courts are about 8,000 square feet after you deal with the setbacks and the 10 feet of borders for safety purposes that are there. So that's 16,000 square foot. Mr. Martinez, who's not here today, he said he applies the Title 22 Division 12 standards for safety, so he likes to have 75 square feet of outdoor play surface per student. So right now, we would have about 110 students during recess, and if there's a field condition, we could fit, the sports courts would fit about 110 students. Right now, we have about 120 to 130 students that would be out there, so we could potentially fit them. But when we reach capacity, 400 students, we would have about 160 5th through 8th grade students outdoor during recess. So there's about 40 students that we would have to accommodate elsewhere. And that's the circumstance I'm talking about. And that's why I drafted the condition, the compromise condition, to deal with that. It says play or recess only where the applicant's landscape contractor makes a determination that the multi-purpose sports field is unsafe for those uses due to weather conditions, including but not limited to rain, flooding, or other safety conditions. That was Mr. Sanders' suggestion, that makes it unsafe for children to engage in the listed uses. Under such circumstances, the school shall maximize the use of the sports courts first and only allow the necessary number of students in the Michelin lot to comply with safety protocols. As I was reading the numbers into the record, if the council wants to even give the appellants one more layer of protection, maybe you can add a sentence that says, however, during such exemption, the number of students in Michelin lot may not exceed 50 students. So that way you're really limiting it to the absolute necessary number of students that need to be out there.
I have a question. So,
Sure.
so what happens today? So if you've got rain right now and you can't use the field, where do the students go to?
They all go on Michelin lot, which is 27,000 square feet. So it's substantially larger than the size of the 2 sporting courts will be together.
So I think I had a similar question, but I'm thinking this might be a question for Mr. Farsing or Ms. Fanara. Is there a rainy day protocol? So on a day where it's actually pouring rain, do the kids go out? Are they outside playing recess, or are they inside? I would assume they'd be inside.
If it's pouring rain, no, but
They're
then
inside.
what happens, it sinks into the ground, so it's still unsafe the next day.
It takes a couple of days
I
for the
understand that, yeah. So I'm gonna understand, is the 30 days the rainy days, or is 30 days, and if Ms. Fanara, if you can come to the microphone for the public.
Excellent question, and I think I know where you're going with it. So potentially it's even less than 30 days because
I don't know, it
I'm
could be.
counting the rain. Okay.
No, it was, Ms. Bertolini is the one who figured it out because she's the one that says you can use the field, you can't use the field, and she marks it on her calendar. So she was the one that said, you can't use the field, just everybody use the Michelinda parking lot because the field is off limits. So she actually has those days marked. So that's how
That's
we
the metric
figured
there?
that, yes.
Okay,
But-
thank you.
But I don't think the question was answered, at least the question in my mind was answered, was that there's 33 days, so how many of those days were actually playable? Like, I can understand, like, the day after a rain when it's nice and sunny out, but, as the mayor said, if it's pouring rain, so it was Ms. Bertolini, was it?
Miss Bertolini, yeah, because she's the one that has the
Right.
contact with the groundskeeper.
So does she have it on it when it was, like, when it was raining and they couldn't play, or was it just that they couldn't play? Because there's, to me, do you understand the distinction?
Yes, I
there?
do.
Okay,
Yeah, the
I just wanna make
kids
sure.
don't leave the classroom when it's raining. They stay in their classrooms.
So is that, but is that then,
That's not one of those days. This is only when the kids can actually go outside
Okay.
because the rain has stopped.
so her 33 days are actual, or the 30 days, excuse me, her 30 days are the actual days when they would have been allowed outside, and the days when they were inside were not counted?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
I have a question too.
And,
Yes.
and that was just this, I mean, that's like this abnormal year. Yeah.
Councilmember Goss has a question. I'm not sure if it's.
So I'm intrigued by the discussion of, as your school reaches capacity at 400, you anticipate that you'll have more students than will fit on the sports courts. Why aren't you talking about building bigger sports courts to accommodate the maximum?
I can allow Mr. Farstein to come and comment on that, but it's setback requirements, landscaping requirements. The space we have that's level cannot accommodate larger courts. If you would like Mr. Farstein to elaborate, I can have him up, but we looked
I
at
would.
that.
I'd like to hear that.
Thank you, Councilmember Goss. I think the location of the sports courts, we had to carefully consider setbacks. We also had to do noise studies on them too. So I think as you start moving sports courts around, we would need to basically do additional noise studies. So at some time in the future, we may come back, 10 years from now, and maybe want to do additional sports court, but there's a lot of planning that needs to go into that. So the sports courts that we're showing south of the villa and east of the Villa Road, those were extensively studied with the environmental consultants, for noise and other setbacks. There's trees that we're preserving.
So you did consider building larger ones, but you didn't have the capability in those locations?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for the city attorney. So in the materials you received from the appellant, specifically with respect to 176170, was there marked up language in there about what would be included in 6A, like specific language that we can react to?
I don't recall receiving anything that had that language, no.
Thank you.
Continue, please.
I actually have no further comments. I think that the council has just done an incredible job. These are tough decisions. I think 6A, I passionately stated my position on that on the record, but I'm offering solutions. And on 11B, we're talking about a very limited circumstance with a very limited number of students that may potentially end up there. But I think that's the purpose of a master plan, and I think it would not be very wise for the city to ignore the issue. We'll be back before you as soon as we add students, and I'd like to address it now.
Thank you. Any further questions before we open this up to public comment on these two issues? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's, our Madam City Clerk isn't here. So why don't we take a 5-minute break? I've been sitting in this chair for a little bit, and then we'll come back to public comment, if that's okay. So let's take 5.
No.
This is even more important.
Well, not important, but I think
My
it's.
sticker fell off. It's falling off. I lost it.
Yeah.
I voted.
Thank you for taking that break. That was.
Or I'm gonna send you the video.
Is this on the current topic? Current topic. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Are we doing public comment again the same way? Public comment again?
What's that?
Public comment.
Yeah. All right, so we'll now hear public comment regarding these two issues within the conditional use permit application. And then after that, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Just a reminder, you're limited to 3 minutes on public comment. There'll be a timer for you. If you make the 3 minutes and you're still talking, I'll ask you to finish up your thought, and then if you keep going, I'll be friendly about it, but I'll ask you to please take your seat. All right, Madam City Clerk, did we receive any public comment cards?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a number of public comment cards, but just for the record, the city staff did receive 16 emails on this topic, which were forwarded to the city council and uploaded onto the city's website.
And we did receive some of those yesterday, which is rare. It's usually the hours before the council meeting, so thank you for sending them in early.
Mr. Mayor, the first speaker is Running Bear Bunch.
Nice to
It's
see
my
you
third
again.
time up here. I'm getting used to this podium. How do I look? Good?
You look good.
So, I really want to speak to the need for the ability to extend time to build the sports courts, and I also want to speak to the occasional use of the Mitchell-Linda lot. Now, obviously, when I as a parent choose a school for my kids, a big part of that is their safety and things like that. But also, we know that families are dynamics, therefore schools are dynamic. Humanity is dynamic. The weather's dynamic. But the most important responsibility of the teachers and faculty and staff and administrators of the school is to care for the children and then to teach them. So first and foremost, their ability to use the campus, of course, the first thing we're going to use is sports courts, because I would sooner have the kids play and be taught and coached on sports courts than on an old parking lot. So I think in good faith, you can expect that the parents and the staff would be using the sports courts in the field as possible. However, when they're not available for whatever reason, we do need to still be able to have the children move around the campus, use the campus as needed. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is the need for extensions. My face and the face of many of the people here are the faces that are going to raise the money. We are the parents. Sierra Madre is one of those places, I grew up here, where, you know, when you have people visit, they go, oh, this little hamlet has a lot of money. And I think everyone sitting here knows the reality that Sierra Madre might be better off per capita than some, but Sierra Madre has to rely on its citizens to keep it as beautiful and dynamic as it is. Alverno's the same way. It looks like a beautiful boutique campus for really, really rich kids. But what it does have is a lot of single moms. It has a lot of kids coming from families who live in apartments, condos with grandparents, or some of them drive Teslas. But the reality is we're going to raise the money. And with everything that's going on in the world and just the reality of human life, I don't want to have so many hurdles legislated for me that I find it difficult to go to my fellow parents and get them to sign checks. Because nobody wants a couple of holes dug in the campus that we can't finish because time's up and we're back here for another year and a half talking about how we move forward. We can legislate for the care of the community, but we can't legislate to the point where my ability to raise funds to build the sports courts to solve the neighbors' problems becomes an arduous task that I have to wake up before I go to work and deal with, rather than wake up with the excitement to do something for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bunch.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is James George.
Thank you, Council. I'm James George. I live on San Gabriel Court, and I'm also a parent of 2 kids at Alverno. I've been coming to these meetings and been listening to some of the proceedings for the meetings that I couldn't attend. So one of the things that I hope that we can kind of rein in here is, to your 2 points, is flexibility on both parts and the willingness to come to a compromise that works for everybody, but I think also needs to be applied across the board. So we are Alverno, right? We're a community, as Arby mentioned. We've got a great campus with a space that's changing, right? This space is going to be different than it's been used for the last 62 years. Going forward, even next year is going to look very different than the last 3 years from when we started the lower school. So the flexibility that I think we're looking for and working with our neighbors is to ensure that the master plan can be adhered to, but does give us that flexibility so that when we do have conditions that need to be met, whether it's an extension on time because of weather delays, or we're trying to get some permits done, or we're trying to raise the money. We do know that this is going to be shouldered by our current parents, hopefully some of our current grandparents and families and friends, activities that hopefully the students will be able to participate in and raise funds for, our amazing alumni and alumni base to help do that. But this is going to be a significant check that we aren't going to go out to our parents tomorrow and say, we're going to do this and everybody's going to get an assessment, for example. We want to avoid that at all costs, but that also means that we're going to have to raise funds. So just like a city has to manage their budget, our school and our Board of Trustees has to manage their budget as well, and we've got to have some of that flexibility. So the point of coming back and asking for forgiveness, if we've raised half of that money, are we going to have to fight for another 1.5 years and another extension on the 15 months to then be able to get us to the point where we actually have the ability and the funds to do this? Because this is also going to be something that's going to have to be phased in terms of the grading and how we actually do it from a logistics perspective. We would love to be able to start tomorrow. If we had the money in the bank tomorrow, I think we would go ahead and do it as quickly as we possibly could. And I think for those parents that want to see their kids playing on those sports courts on a level, actual court versus a little bit of a slant, nobody wants to see our kids playing basketball or volleyball in something that's uneven. So we want flexibility, and I think we're trying to be as flexible as parents and for our Board of Trustees as possible as well, but also from the idea of how is this being applied across the board? Is every other school in Sierra Madre being faced with these same conditions and restrictions, or are we being singled out? And currently we have something before the council, where we had it before the Planning Commission, which was approved after a very laborious process to get there. So I just want us to understand from Councilmember Parkhurst's earlier comments of, we've talked about, what was it in your inspiration? Stand behind our decisions, stand behind our vote, stand behind the decisions that were being made by the community. We've elected people to positions of power, and we have to kind of give them the faith and the trust that they're going to do right by our constituents. So I hope that we can at least put this to bed, because I know that our parents and our alumni are ready to get these, to break ground, and as we call it, support the courts.
Thank you, Mr. George.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Jorge Reyes.
Good evening, Mayor, Community Council. May it please the Council, I'm an attorney, but I'm here as a concerned parent. So this is my first time here, and from the tone of all of the work that's gone into this presentation, and also the appellants and the applicant, I can tell there's been a lot of work that's been done. I've been working, I have my own practice in Pasadena, but my history, I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. And I chose this community. I live on Cynthia, but I have 3 children in Alverno. And growing up in South Central, one of the schools that I went to, we had nothing but asphalt. We didn't have any courts. We didn't have any opportunities. And so I want my children to be able to have those opportunities here at their school. And some of the points that came to mind from law school is that the law abhors a forfeiture. And so giving our elected officials the ability to also do right and treat their citizens and constituents in good faith allows for the discretion to be provided for certain conditions. So there's a mention of force majeure and then also the governmental delay. You know, some of those applications and considerations that are unknown that trigger those conditions can and should be delegated as a matter of right, so that those conditions and those extensions can be provided, so that when those issues happen, force majeure, act of God, or something that is unintended delay, that depriving of further discretionary extension would also deprive the ability of all of the investments, all of the hard work. And as I was sitting there listening, I started to have like a very uneasy feeling in my stomach that this is a way for there to be a indirect, a de facto default, where there's a poison pill that is injected by depriving the opportunity to extend. And so that to me made me feel uneasy as a parent, because my kids won't have a place where they could play, or also these extensions for these conditions on a limited basis, so that you can maximize good use of property, so that that is not taken. You know, there's also conditions of, under the law, you know, that there shouldn't be any taking without due process. And so I do understand from listening from the appellants that, you know, there are concerns, and so we've been willing, and I think here in good faith, to make sure that those concerns are expressed. But also as parents, my biggest hope is that my kids can play and have these opportunities for them to grow, you know, build camaraderie and have these lasting impressions. And, you know, my son is in Little League, and so going over to Heasley, I can see the invaluable, you know, opportunities of being able to play that apply. So I'm not always there at all the practices because I have busy practice, and I'm not versed in CEQA, but I'm here to give my opinions as a parent, as a civilian, not an attorney. So thank you, counsel.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Reyes.
much. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Jason Sanders.
Welcome back.
Thank you, counsel. So I think I'd like to use this opportunity just to address, if I'm not going to be given an opportunity later, some of the things that the applicant's attorney has mentioned. And I think I'd like to start with the, you know, I was listening to one of the earlier presentations about climate change. And I think that consideration really needs to be driven home here, because what the Academy would have you believe is that what we experienced here in California this year was a one-off. Climate change would suggest that what we experienced this year may actually become the status quo. And so we are not just looking at necessarily 30 days. We may be looking at much more, and I think that the Academy needs to use this opportunity to really engage in some long-range planning vision. They have more than enough square footage to develop on that property. They don't need to use the Michelin de lot as an auxiliary, because there's more than enough square footage on both of those, the two new sports courts, to accommodate the staggered recess. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, it should not be lost on this council that the Academy has destroyed the very hard surface that they could be using to accommodate this activity, because they had to make way for the multi-purpose field. And so I would like to take it back to this long-range planning vision. And there's been a stunning absence of that in this case. They've essentially made their bed. Now they have to lie in it, and they're asking for the council to just continue sanctioning conduct that's occurring on a lot that really isn't made for recess. It's made for parking. So I think that's all I want to add to the discussion that we had earlier. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Keith Stevens.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. So let's clarify what we're talking about here. The Mitchelinda parking lot is a lumpy, off-cambered piece of ground with bad pavement on it that really is in no means a sports court. And quite frankly, I think it should be embarrassing for Alverno to host a visiting team and say, let's play on this sports court. We came to you with an appeal that we wanted to see all sporting activity moved off campus onto appropriate courts. You asked us to make a deal and said, the best deal is nobody's happy. Well, we are not happy with the result. We're still talking about it here, but as far as I can see, Alverno is getting 2 courts where they were only asking for 1.5 before. They're getting 15 months to do it, and now we're talking about the possible extensions. This past Sunday, 6 o'clock, my wife and I went out on our front porch to have dinner, and there was an event going on in the Mitchelinda parking lot on a Sunday afternoon. The parking lot was full. We couldn't find anything on their calendar. People were mingling in the parking lot. Children were playing. By 6:30, they started to clear out. 6:30 in the morning, we get up and there's a bus in the parking lot, and again, the parking lot's full. The Mitchelinda parking lot is a parking lot bustling with activity. In the time that we have made this appeal, there have been 6 villa activities, 6 villa parties, whatever, taken place there. We put up with a lot. There's so much more to this place than just the school. And 5 years ago, there were 2 tennis courts and 1.5 basketball courts on the Alverno property. While they simultaneously repurposed and wiped out those nice graded courts, they quadrupled or quintupled the number of sports teams that they want to accommodate in competition sports. They have created the problem. They have literally painted themselves into a corner, our corner. We feel we have compromised enough, and we really, on that meeting at 1:30 in the morning, I remember we asked twice, so wait, after 15 months, whether the courts are built or not, they're going to be off, and this was confirmed twice. And I just don't see why this discussion continues on. We have put up with a lot, we give a lot, we have compromised a lot, and we see that any wiggle room that they are left will be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Mayor, there are no other speaker cards.
One more.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. I was not expecting to speak. I'm exhausted. I spent the whole weekend talking to every neighbor that called me, and I said, please thank the council. That's all we want. I hope they were polite. I hope they asked a lot of questions, and it took a lot out of me to do that. I can appreciate the parents being here. I thank them. I'd like to see their faces a little bit more. There's always talk about working it out with the neighbors, and yet we never hear from anyone afterwards. We do not find this to be a reciprocal situation. It is nice that the kids can play. We want the kids to play. There are 11 other acres on this property. This isn't like they just have this one corner. I would like to remind everybody that in 2010, they were given the right to build a multi-purpose building, or gym in short, and during that time there was an EIR that said it was so impactful in that corner. It is too noisy to have the sports field. That is why it was put down in the southwestern. Let's not forget the original EIRs. This needs to go back for an EIR if this is going to continue. This is getting ridiculous. It's expensive for you, our city, us, even the school, to keep throwing things out that belongs in the public school system. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry, I'm just getting really upset now. Weather is an issue for everybody. It changes, it fluctuates. We went through years of drought. We could end up with years of drought. It was Alverna who offered putting the kids all on the sport court in the Zoom meeting. It was like, okay, great, that's a fine idea. And then there wouldn't be a need for the parking lot. Councilwoman Krebs brought up, wait, you wanted one sport court, now two, and you want to use it? I think it's incredulous as well. It isn't necessary. There are cars that are parking on the street. There are cars that sit in the parking lot. These kids are playing around cars as well. But please remember the biggest thing about this gym, it had an NMD. It has 4 walls and a roof, and they still had to have a mitigation factor built into it. We are now looking at an outdoor area. It can be 10 kids, and it is very loud. Yes, we are inside our home. Yes, our doors are shut. We have wall-to-wall glass, but we keep changing our home it's gonna be like $200,000 for us to accommodate the school. When are they gonna start accommodating us? As it is now, there's 3 basketball hoops plainly in front of our home. Could they have been considerate and maybe moved them? So over the weekend when kids come, I don't know what they're there for, we're listening to basketball courts all over again. It doesn't end. Like my husband said, it's a cumulative effect we are looking at. They offered to use the sport courts and leave the parking lot. We would like to see that. And nobody's saying they can't pray, they can't play, they absolutely can. But we have the right to as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
And now no other speaker cards, Mr. Mayor.
Take one more.
I didn't fill out a card, but I'd like to respond to Mrs. Stevens. I'm Joanne Herbedian. I'm the director of the lower school at Alverno Heights Academy. In reference to her complaint, or Mr. Stevens' complaint about Sunday evening, that was a very short amount of time where our 8th grade students gathered in the parking lot to load a bus to go on a trip to Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, the bus was delayed, therefore, the parents drove the kids to the airport. So there was no bus that evening. On Monday morning at 6:30 in the morning, again, 2 buses did arrive, picked up 2 classes, and took off very quickly following the blessing by our deacon. So it was used as a parking lot. Parents gathered, wished their kids well, and they took off for an extended trip. Per the Stevens request, we're using it as a parking lot. In reference to the sports courts, we have committed to building 2, not out of selfishness, because this is a really heavy lift for us. It's out of consideration for neighbors. So I would hope that they realize that we have no intentions of doing anything but what we've promised, but the Mitchell Indoor Lot has to be a backup for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harbedian. Yes. Oh, no. Thought you're raising your hand. Any more public comment? Ms. Soltani, would you like any response, or are you're okay? Thank you. So let's bring it back to the council for discussion.
Can I ask a gating procedural question?
Sure.
So in terms of what this discussion should be organized around, are we trying to interpret what the council was to have decided on these issues at the April 11th meeting? Or are we discussing today what the outcome should be on these 2 issues? Sort of, and weighing the discussion.
Councilmember, the latter. This is a continuation of the agenda item that you discussed on April 11th. You aren't limited to things that you said on April 11th. Some of these issues were not discussed. And so it's for the council today to come to some consensus on these 2 issues.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Councilmember Parker, so looked like you were ready to say something.
I can,
Okay.
but, so I think, a couple of thoughts I had. So I'm very sympathetic to the Stevens case. You know, Alverno is not a school. It's a school, it's a wedding venue, it is a film play location, and so I think that that's really something that I keep in mind while I'm thinking about this, is that, you know, if it was just a school, you wouldn't have much activity on the weekends. You wouldn't have much activity over the summer. I mean, you'd have some summer school and some things like that, but there's a larger impact here. And so that's one of the things I keep in mind when I'm thinking about this. I am really intrigued by the proposal of a notification requirement. I think some clarification on process around 6A makes a lot of sense. I am not interested. I'm actually, I have strong feelings about even entertaining a discussion on 1760-170. There was no edited language. There was no proposal on it. That, like, I would strongly prefer not to go there. I do think on item 11, I'm trying to think through the different ways on it. I think that I find the language of the appellant in 11B confusing. I have to read it a couple of times, and one of my concerns with that is that as we go forward, I don't want to have any confusion of this. I'd like to make sure we're very crystal clear on what's there, and so I like the idea of having the summary paragraph at the end of saying what is and what isn't allowed after 15 months. And then I think finally, it is my recollection that that after 15 months there was not to be any activity on that field, even in inclement weather. That's my memory of that, and so that's kind of where I'm coming down on that item. But I'm open to continuing to discuss that item.
Thank you.
I can go. So when I was looking at I'll do 6A first as well. I think that the way it is stated could be misconstrued, and so because there's multiple parts that say on both sides that presented as well as our version, where the 15 months, I'm sorry, I'm going 6A first. When we were discussing the extension, we specifically said that we didn't want to, of course, and again, this is for the audience that came to public comment, we aren't saying that the building has to, or the lots, the sports fields have to be done in 15 months. We're saying that we're just allowing activities to be on the Mitchell-Linda lot till then. That's up to Alverno and when they build. And that was based on the concept that this was passed in 2011, that there has been some time and now it needs to proceed with some type of due date for when the noise can discontinue on the Mitchell-Linda lot. So that's why we said that we also didn't agree with constant extensions, and that it would only be extended if it was up to us or some other entity in the permitting process, not up to the ability of Alverno to proceed further. So I would, although I also do not agree that I think it should be upon us as a city and our city staff to police that. I think that we've already gone through more than I anticipated as a city council in terms of litigation, in terms of this process, and I know it was our duty to, but that seems to go beyond our city's process. I don't think it should be up to us and our staff to have to control that. So I don't think that Alverno would be able to ask for extensions for anything other than what was or the permitting process's delay. Regarding the field, I specifically brought my notes, and I'm glad I saved these, because I did actually circle that play recess shall also be permitted on the Mitchell-Linda lot during rain events, and this is the appellant's language. And I also circled that we included, after completion of permanent sports courts, play and recess during rain events shall no longer be permitted on Mitchell-Linda parking lot and will instead occur on the permanent sports court, when I had crossed out other items. So I agree that should be the time limit for the rain events also, and even after the 15 months, because there is a lot of property there. I think it can be creative. I know planning is hard to do, when you talk about changes in environment, changes in population and demographics on the campus, but I think there can be something else done than using the parking lot.
Thank you. Councilmember Goss, what are you thinking here?
My recollection is the same as Councilmember Lowe's. I feel that so I remember Mayor Pro Tem Krebs used the word, we need to incentivize the academy to get this done, and therefore if we let unlimited extensions and unlimited circumstances prevail, then there's really no deadline, and there's less incentive to get those sports courts built. They have to be built, and so it's a difficult thing for me to say this, but it seems to me that and we got a lot. I mean, we didn't see this. The people in this room didn't see it, but we got a lot of emails, and they all had one basic thing in common. They all seemed to be very concerned that we not renege on the spirit of that agreement we made the other night, and which was to put some kind of absolute limit on how long that Michelin lot could be used. So I heard tonight from Alverno that they have already done work to try to create sports courts, but I also heard that they've also got plans to expand that will go way in excess of what the sports courts are able to accommodate. Is that our problem? Is that the neighbor's problem? That is not the neighbor's problem. That is not our problem. That is something that Alverno is simply going to have to fix. I don't know what to tell them. I see a gigantic property there, and I would assume that somebody who is creative could find a solution to that, and so I'm encouraging them to do that. So my take on this is I would keep the 15 months, this extension language we heard. You know, I take the point that you have the right to petition government for redress of grievances. That means you get to ask government to do something. So at any time, Alverno can come up and come to the city council, come to the city manager, come to the planning commission and express the situation they're in and ask for some kind of help. That doesn't guarantee they're going to get it. Petition government for redress of grievances just allows you to say, it doesn't allow you to get an outcome. So I don't agree necessarily that putting no extension on this is a bad thing. I think it's probably what we have to do. I do agree with Councilmember Parkhurst that the 11B language is kind of confusing. I'd like to see that cleaned up. I'm not sure how to do that. I sure don't want to be here till 1:30 trying to figure that out. But that's where I'm at right now.
I guess I was in the minority. I actually had a contemporaneous recollection after the meeting, because I actually was concerned right after the meeting that there wasn't actually a meeting of the minds on this issue, and that I wasn't sure whether the appellants and their counsel realized that my understanding of what we approved was more in line with what the Alverno version of the 11B use condition was. And so that's why I asked my question about kind of what the parameters of this discussion was, because you know, I feel pretty confident that that's how I felt I was voting on the 11th, because I remember thinking that there might be an issue here, because I didn't think that that the appellants realized that that was how I understood the vote. That being said, you know, I'm not beholden to that. We did a lot of work that night. I mean, I want to point that out, actually. You know, we're focused on these 2 points at which there's a disagreement as to what was talked about in a 7+ hour meeting. I want to actually point out that everything else that we did, you know, came out pretty well. And so I don't want us to focus on the fact that we sort of got a miss on these 2 items, because we had a, you know, pretty great contemporaneous, you know, live drafting session where we drafted, you know, however many, you know, conditions are here. So I don't want that to get lost, that in the good work that everybody did, including both the parties, and their willingness to compromise and get in a room and find something that would work for both people, maybe again, not to everybody's full liking. Look, I mean, I am not beholden, you know, as the city attorney said, to what, I thought the decision was on April 11th, so I'm open to discussion on that. In terms of the extension process, you know, I agree that there's no way our city manager can, you know, on his own decide there might need to be an extension. I mean, that is fraught on so many levels. You know, and I do take seriously Mr. Sanders' point about there needing to be notice, and that if there is a request for an extension, again, based on only these two opportunities for extension, that there needs to be a process so that folks can be heard. And you know, the practicality is if there is an extension based on you know, an allegation of force majeure, there's going to have to be some, you know, evidence, some presentation made to that effect, that it rises to the level of force majeure. And frankly, there should be an opportunity to counter that allegation from Malverno that there has occurred a force majeure that would, you know, that would warrant an extension. And I think there should be an opportunity to counter that and have us hear, you know, and have the city manager hear both sides. So I do think a process around that. You know, whether we draw that process from other processes that are already in our code that, you know, will work for this, you know, sort of, you know, we can figure that out. But I agree that there needs to be some process around that. It's not going to be, you know, at the, not just the grant of the extension is not going to just be at the city manager's discretion, but also the need for it. I just don't think was what we were talking about. That, to me, the discretion that we were granting the city manager was to make the determination whether the extension was warranted based on the two exceptions, and that was his discretion, not if an extension was needed, because we just wouldn't have the facts to determine that.
Thank you. It's funny how we remember things in different ways, right? And I'm going to talk about, I guess, 6A first in the phasing plan. As I recall, you know, this has specific language saying that the sports courts need to be built in 15 months. And I can understand the public comment that has been made that 15 months might not be long enough. And that wasn't the spirit of what I thought in the discussion. As far as how long it takes to build these sports courts, my feeling was take however long as you want, but the majority of the play needs to come off the parking lot in 15 months, right? So that's two different things. It's more of a passive. You cannot do certain activities after 15 months on the Mitchell-Linda lot. Whether or not you build the sports courts or not, I don't know. But we wanted to incentivize the sports courts, especially going back historically, thinking about the multipurpose room back in 2011, which still hasn't been built. And I know that's a whole different animal in a much bigger capital raise. So I'm not feeling, and I don't know if, I don't want to rewrite anything either, but I don't know that 6 needs to be looked at again. But, you know, it does say the applicant shall construct 2 sports courts. It's my feeling that Alverno wants to construct these 2 sports courts, and the appellants want these built as well. So I think it's mutually beneficial. But I don't know that the time constraint is specifically important. I think talking about the time constraint within Section 11 is a different story. So to me, they're 2 different things. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that, because I'm not sure that 6 is really capturing our spirit of our conversation last meeting.
So are you saying you felt like the discussion around the extension was not specific to the build, but was an extension of the use of Mitchell-Linda for those activities beyond the 15 months? Because of a force majeure preventing the construction of the court, or a permitting issue preventing the construction of the court? Yeah,
and I kind of spoke to that a little bit earlier. Yeah. You know, it's kind of a good faith gesture if these things are going forward, if it's going forward and being built, and something occurs in the interim that delays that, hey, it's getting built. Rah, let's get this thing built. And if something happens in the interim, I would want the academy to have an opportunity to ask for an extension.
But not any something, just to be clear.
No, not any something. So I think it was clear force majeure and any municipality or governmental agency slowing down the process. Yeah, I don't know that city manager is the right person to make the call. I thought the city manager was the right person to make the decision, but not affirmatively say, hey, there's been an act of God or there's been a delay, because I know how much is on the city manager's plate, and this probably would be, we're talking about the plate, right? And this would be kind of on the corner here regarding all the things he needs to do for the city. So, but I do like Ms. Soltani's noticing requirement amendment to 6A, if we want to look at that, because I do think that is important to notify the residents so they can have a voice in this as well. And then going back to 11B, I reviewed the videos, and we were all exhausted, and we had a closed session for an hour before the meeting even started, so we were sitting over 8 hours at that point in time. And a lot of good work got done. So my feeling was, and I don't know that it was articulated, but it was banging around my brain, I want the kids to be able to play. And so I don't know that I'm the minority on this, but I want the neighbors' voices to be heard and there to be noise abatement, but in a situation where the kids aren't able to play, I wanted them to be able to, Alvena to be able to use the property in a smart way to continue movement for the children, because if they're not moving, I know my kids at home, if they don't get outside and they get cabin fever, and it gets even worse. So, yeah, and I can be swayed on that as well, because I think a lot of work did get done within these documents we have in front of us. So that's kind of where I am on 6 and 11. The flexibility of the 15 months, yeah, I think we should kind of talk about that, and if we can build consensus, great. If we can't, we'll have a majority, I'm sure, some way.
Mr. Mayor, are you saying that you would be willing to extend playing and activities on the Michelin lot beyond the 15 months?
Yeah, I had it in my mind, only I'm thinking about the kids, right? But I'm also thinking about the residents. I mean, there's a balance there, and I don't know how to balance it, given the way I've been to that property, and given the way the property is set up currently, and I do take Mr. Sanders' point, or maybe it was the appellant regarding they created their own monster, they got rid of the tennis courts, they got rid of the basketball courts. What were you thinking, right? So I do understand that, but at the same time, that's no fault of the kids, right? So I have a little bit of a soft spot there. What can they do if not all of them fit in the sports courts and it's not safe to be on the field? What else can they do?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So what is your thought about, there's some compelling conversations in my mind about Alverno they've kind of made their bed a little bit to sleep in on this, 2 tennis courts and a basketball court. They made the decision that a better use of their property was for fields. And, I try to live my life, and I try to raise my kids that way. If you make a decision, you've got to live with it. And so I completely understand where you're coming from, and it's, yes, we don't want to impact the kids. We don't want to penalize the kids out of this. I already feel bad that during the 15 months that we're limiting one of the PEs there. Like, we're already cutting, I feel like we're kneecapping some there. But I struggle. I struggle with, like, you're looking at a strategic plan, and you're looking at your property, and you need to be making those decisions, and you decided to have those courts. You decided to have that field. Sorry. I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming on it. And I don't want to penalize the kids, but sometimes kids get the short end because of bad adult decisions.
Yeah, that was my point exactly.
Okay.
I'm not sure, like, how do you balance that?
Right.
I would say, to be fair, if there wasn't a field in lieu of the tennis courts and the basketball, we might be talking about soccer and tennis going on the parking lot. So I don't know to me, that's not a fatal decision, because, the parking lot is in lieu of the activities that can no longer happen in the southeast corner. But there are other activities going on in the southeast corner that if those were not fields, then those activities might be happening in some fashion on the lot. So I don't actually view that as an either-or situation. That being said, I was somewhat persuaded by Councilmember Goss's point that currently, under the current enrollment, the sports courts would provide sufficient backup if the fields were unusable, and that really it's just a matter of, to the applicant's point, long-range planning, and I understand that this needs to be a living, breathing document for longer than 15 months or 24 months. That being said, enrollment decisions and expansion decisions should take into account the limitations that exist on your physical plant. So to the extent that additional students can't be accommodated on the sports court if the fields are unavailable, then, there should be plans as to what to do about that, not using a parking lot as a backup, or maybe enrollment doesn't get expanded until those solutions have presented themselves. So I was somewhat persuaded by that there is a push-pull here, that this is supposed to be a document that's going to last for a long period of time, but it shouldn't just allow everything to happen. There needs to be considerations as to trade-offs, and I think this is not an unfair one.
Point taken. Yeah, thank you.
I agree with what you all were just saying regarding that. I want to address also the equivalent schools in the area and whether we're being equal. And if we looked at the other schools, private or public, around our locations, that's the largest property for a private lower middle school that we have. If you look at Gooden School, if you look at any of the other schools except for maybe St. Rita's, and they're not using that large of a space as their extra space. They accommodate for their locations from all the research I've been doing and having taught at Gooden School as well. And so I think that I think it is fair for everything that we came up so far. I think it's fair to say that we shouldn't necessarily use the Mitchell parking lot beyond the 15 months. I don't think that's an unreasonable reaction, especially with moving forward with fundraising for those other fields and for the other use spaces. And I think that now that there's more direction with Alverno, with what's happening with the demographics and the population, that should help their planning, whereas before it might have been hindered because you're focusing on trying to increase enrollment, you're trying to do all these other things, and a lot has changed that in our environment alone, where these things would not have happened during a COVID year where we shut down schools. And I think we're all kind of reacting to that, and I think now's the perfect time to set up this master plan better for what's coming for the future, and I think that has to be on both sides. The Alverno needs to really analyze what their needs are, and I hope they have a committee already set, since we're already in the process of almost completing this, so they could just get up and go after this. But I also think that we have to accommodate the fact that kids were locked up inside homes forever, for 2 years. You know how detrimental that has been to children? And I think the kids do have to play, and I understand they're noisy, and some of us love the noise, and some of us don't. And I think there has to be some middle ground in that. But, I mean, COVID was great for some people because you didn't hear kids play. And for some of us, that was not so great. So that's my take.
Can I add to that?
Please.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the idea that we're not treating Alverno equally with other schools, I don't think is a sound idea, largely because they've been on this council 9 years now, and this is the only school that I've had to field these kinds of complaints about. As a matter of fact, when this first came to us, I made this statement here in public session. I said, well, this is essentially a neighborhood dispute. No matter if it's a school or not, this is neighbors versus neighbors. Let's get this solved. Well, it's not solved. The only other thing that's close to this is the middle school. Neighbors behind the middle school did not like the basketball courts that were put up. They brought those complaints to us. We had no authority. It's a Pasadena Unified School District. Pasadena Unified School District closed them down. You can't play basketball outside the middle school. So that's the only thing here that's even correlates closely to this, and that was the outcome there. And we didn't make that decision, but certainly the people in the neighborhood were pleased with that outcome, let's put it that way. So I feel like having had a child in one of the other schools, I feel like Alverno can get this done. I don't really believe that this is rocket science. I think this is just making some strategic planning decisions and then sticking to it. And I hope that we're leaving them with enough leeway to get that done.
I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pull the covers back, but thinking about the other private schools, because we have no jurisdiction, as you said, with the public schools. I don't believe we have master plans with them because they haven't come to the city with large plans, right? So they should have master plans, but they don't, because there hasn't been any process for a large shift in construction, right? So it is different because there is a master plan. The other ones don't have one, because they haven't come to us asking, can we build a huge building or things like that. So that's why it's a little different here, because there's a request for something. Am I wrong there? Or, yeah, I didn't think so, yeah.
Do we have, sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, Mayor, if you'd like, I've been listening to the council. I tried to draft some language that accommodates the majority of what the council's saying. Would you like me to recite that, or if you have some, if you'd like have some language, or you wanna have further discussion?
No, I think we're moving in a good direction, and I feel like in my mental straw poll, we kind of have a consensus, maybe not a consensus, maybe definitely a majority. So yes, please.
I think Councilman Parkhurst may have had some language too, I'm not sure.
No.
No, okay. So for condition 6, we'll leave it as A, and then we'll have 1, 2. And then instead of having 3, which reads an extension cannot be granted, 3 will just be a continuation of A, of 6A. And so here's what the paragraph will say. An extension cannot be granted based on the applicant's failure to obtain funding. Notice of the reason for any requested extension shall be mailed to properties within 300 feet of the campus. The city manager shall make his determination within 30 days of the mailing of the notice, period. So that residents will be notified. They'll have roughly 30 days to submit comments to the city manager, and after that, the expiration of those 30 days, the city manager can make a determination. It's not a hearing. It's going to be in the city manager's discretion, but at least he'll have the benefit of the comments of the neighbors, and the neighbors will be aware of what Alverno's reason is for the requested extension.
And I want to be clear, that extension is just for construction of the sports courts.
Yes, correct.
Which I wasn't too thrilled about anyway, but
Construction of the sports court or continuation of the activity that's allowed?
no, construction of the sports courts, that's how it reads.
Well, I know that's how it reads,
Yeah.
but you had an issue with that.
Yeah, I did, yeah. But I might be in the minority here.
Do you have a suggestion on how to modify that? Because I agree with your concept, and I really like that as well. And so if there's an additional change, I don't want to spend a lot of time rewording it, but if there's something, that we change in 6 or 6A,
You could say may instead of shall.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And then really the relevance of this section, this 6A won't really have any teeth except for its relevance to 11, to condition 11.
I would, I mean, I don't know if this is too radical, but I would almost move the extension portion, like, so that 6 is just basically, they're submitting each phase of the master plan development, that, the applicant may construct 2 sports courts as shown in Exhibit B, and then the extension that, language that you just read would actually be moved to 11 to extend the use for the, for the activities that are limited to the 15 months.
We could do it that way. It's gonna be a little more drafting.
Yeah, that's why I said it might be a little too radical, but to me, that's really, the extension is not for the, in my mind, the extension is not for the construction. The extension is to allow the activity longer, because we're not mandating that they, how and when and if I mean, that was my thought from the last meeting, that we aren't mandating if and how and when they actually build the courts, but that there is a consequence of failing to build the courts within the 15 months.
I'm trying in my mind to limit, not only to make this logically flow, but to limit the number of edits, because I'm concerned that when you edit here, it often impacts the section here and there.
Yes, I'm very aware of that.
I'm not.
No,
again,
then
I have no
maybe
problem.
the easier fix is actually, because I actually don't think if we keep if we change shall to may and then have this extension process, I don't think it's abundantly clear that this extension would apply to to 11, because there's no actual direct connection between 6
It
and 11.
references it. 11 references 6A.
Subject to an extension.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, okay.
And
Is that in both drafts or just the?
it's in both drafts.
Cross it out.
And the proposed edit, I was based on what council was saying to 11, in my mind, to make things clear, is instead of having a B that says for a 15-month period, and then having an F that says for a 15-month period, take that language in B that starts with play, recess, sporting activities, and make it D of the current F. So for a 15-month period following the approval of this conditional use permit entitlement, subject to extensions granted by the city manager and the planning and community preservation department condition number 6A, the following additional uses are permitted. 1, basketball for 5th through 8th grade students, and the rest of the sentence. 2, physical education classes. 3, after school sports until 6:30 p.m. And 4, play, recess, and sporting activities during play or recess on those days where the applicant's landscape contractor makes a determination that the multipurpose sports field is unsafe for those uses to occur in the multipurpose sports field due to weather conditions resulting from rain or flooding. And it would require a little bit of renumbering, but that would be the edit. And at the very end, that last highlight, instead of saying condition number 11A, C through E, it would just say condition number 11, A through D.
Yeah.
So you got rid of the condition number 6A?
Got rid of condition number 6B, and we took the relevant portion of 6B and we stuck it down in F and added it to F.
Not 6B, you mean 11B.
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 Okay.
Sorry.
So we're getting rid of the subject to extensions granted by?
Right, because that language is already in the intro to F.
Right.
Just mirrors the same language.
All of the activities that are limited to 15 months would be subject to extension,
Correct.
just to make it clear for Councilmember Gross.
To the 2 extensions, to the 2 possible reasons for extensions in 6A.
I like it.
Okay, so Ms. Soltani wants to say something, but I can't invite you up without allowing Mr. Sanders an opportunity to talk after you do. So I'll entertain it. Come on up, and then
I appreciate it. At the time, I just wanted to point out what you actually pointed out, that it is correlated. 6 and 11 were correlated, but as Mr. Your city attorney was reading the language, I just want to make sure we capture field maintenance as well, the aeration situation, the 8 days that we have field maintenance, if the contractor makes a determination that the field is not safe for play. I mean, I think I know where the council is going. At least I want to get that issue resolved as well.
For the 15 months, correct?
in section F.
If that's the will of the council, yes, but at least
Section F
that.
you're talking?
Where it would be in.
So wherever you would add this new exemption for the period of 15 months, the language needs to be clear that it's for, if the applicant's landscape contractor makes a determination that the multipurpose sports field is unsafe for those uses due to weather conditions, including but not limited to lane flooding or other safety conditions, or maybe you can just put aeration, whichever Mr. Sanders prefers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sanders?
So I think the issue here is that we, in our version, we only agreed to rain and flooding. Ms. Soltani wants the addition of aeration. You know, I'm not trying to make this process more difficult. It's just that I believe when we were discussing aeration, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, okay? I believe when we were discussing aeration in the negotiating room on the April 11th meeting, there was some statement by the athletic director or one of the Alverno staff that this activity may not always occur during school hours. So I'm just wondering why there would need to be an exception if this is occurring, either in the morning or if it can occur in the morning. So if it's occurring during school hours now and there's a big machine out on the field that's, doing the aeration while school's in session, can that be moved either to before school, after school?
I understand. I don't know if this might be for Mr. Farsing. Can somebody explain the process of aeration? We've heard a lot about it, but sorry, Ms. Hart. I know what it means.
I know what it
but,
means
yeah.
for dirt. I don't know what it means for turf.
Thank you.
And the timing.
So I'm not, obviously not, I don't maintain the field, but from my experience with field aeration, it's the machinery, of course, that does the turning or actually punching holes. But there's a few days.
But this is a field turf. This is not grass and dirt.
It's grass so that the grass
Oh, this is a
thrives.
grass field.
It's for a grass field,
Okay.
football field, baseball, outfield. I'm sure they do it at Heasley. I could ask Russ Meeks for,
No, I'm familiar with how it works with dirt. I just was under the impression that your field was turf.
Oh, no, it's grass.
We actually toured it the
why,
same day, and it was raining, so
yeah,
we couldn't.
so when you were there, it was a deluge, but it's a beautiful field. It's very similar to Heasley.
Yeah.
So then you know that once
Familiar
a
with
year you aerate to keep it, healthy and as lush as possible. I'd like to just promise all of you that the 15 months will be abided by, but I hate to see it be definitive, because in the event that we have no intentions of using that parking lot unless absolutely necessary. I guarantee you that. And we're not intending to go to 400 students immediately, not under my reign anyway. So we just want to avoid coming back to you. So I do promise you that we're not trying to, do anything underhanded. We intend to have the kids down on that beautiful field at all times. And I'd like to make a reference back to the tennis courts that were there. They were the original tennis courts from the Barlows from 1924, so they weren't really in great condition. I went to school there, so we weren't allowed on them back when I went to school just a few years ago. I do promise you that we have no malintent. We had no malintent over the weekend when the kids left to go to the airport. It was a very short amount of time. It was very quiet. I mean, it's not silent, but a parking lot is not silent. Cars
Thank you.
make noise. Okay, so.
Thank you, Ms. Harabedian.
Thank you.
I just really wanted to hear about aeration. She went a little beyond that. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Stevens. That's all I wanted. The other part I've stricken from the record. A lot of lawyers here. Okay. Where are we? As far as aeration is concerned.
I think it's 15 months, and I'm less concerned about slight extensions of something that's going to happen over 15 months. That's my sense.
Agree with that.
I think it's going to happen once, right, in that time frame.
They generally, it's once a year. That's been my experience in aeration.
Oh, and so, to continue on your question before, when does aeration typically happen?
I don't think it matters. I mean, like, for example, Heasley does it in, like, November, December, but that's, I think, primarily because it's between seasons. I don't think it's particularly seasonal in terms of, like, it needs to be done in the winter.
So that's kind of the direction I'm headed is that there's some summer classes this summer. I mean, I don't want to tell Alverno how to do it, but at the same time, I don't want to make this overly complex. And, I mean, there's spring break, there's summer break, there's all kinds of opportunities on it. I'm kind of in the same mind of others, like, let's keep it to the sports activities that are there.
It's potentially one day out of the 15 months, so. Yeah, I'm trying to wrestle with, we're not running the school, and I don't know how often, if you can get a narrator out there to your schedule, hopefully, right?
I also don't know that it shouldn't happen in the winter. I just know that for the baseball, it happens in the winter primarily because it's a downtime.
Yes.
But maybe it's supposed to happen in the winter. I don't know. I don't
That's
want to
probably
make myself an aeration.
That's when football's going on, and yeah.
By any means. My football's done in November.
So we have a proposal in front of us, right? And I mean, I'm on. We have two proposals in front of us, right? So we have the 11 moving B into F, and then in 6 we've got we've got a new paragraph made. I mean, I think that I heard it read to us. Yes, please.
I just typed it out in red line. If you'd like, we can have it up on the screen.
Let's do that.
James, I'm
Not
emailing
an
you.
auditory learner.
Can I email you?
I also don't want it to come back.
You can't get emails here?
Just
If I give
to
you a flash drive?
Councilmember Parker's point, while they're bringing this up, you're right. I think one of the proposals is to move B into FD, but there still is the question about which B, because the appellant and the applicant have different versions of B, and so I think that's the nuance that we're kind of debating now is which B, and it's going to be a hybrid, is my sense of how it's going to end up.
I believe City Attorney Gargosian was reading from the Alverno Heights Academy when he was reading the language.
No, I think he was actually reading from the appellant.
Well, he wouldn't have been reading from the appellant necessarily because both of them, it says after 15-month period, so we wouldn't put B with the same language for a period of 15 months.
No, but when he read the and subject, play, recess, and sporting activities during play or recess on days, that matched up to the appellant's.
Okay. And the Planning and Community Preservation Department was the other thing that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I was thinking item 6.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know he jumped around to this one.
Yeah, he was reading as to what he would move into F.
Got it.
So I think Ms. Sultani's proposal, based on the attorney's reading, was that if we were going to move that language taken from the appellant's draft, that we include their language that says, other safety conditions or aeration specifically, making it unsafe for children to engage, or play on the court or on the field, essentially. I think that's the bid ask, I think, currently. Are you putting up 11 or 6?
6.
Both. Both.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you.
Sorry. Oh, I saw. Have you seen the update? Don't leave me in suspense. Oh, okay.
Oh, fresh.
Yeah, so if you could scroll down to, and I'll tell you the page here. You could scroll down to page, let's see. Oh, shoot. It's 9. And we'll have to make one live edit there too. All the way to 9. Page 9. One more. Yep, keep going. Yeah, just keep going to number 6. So right there, stop. I think the first edit, which I didn't make, is applicant shall.
Yeah.
construct 2 sports courts. So if you could change that to May, if you're able to live edit it. So that would be the first edit, and if you scroll down, the rest are in red line. Or they were on red line. If you nope. Scroll up. Would the council like to discuss this one first, or would you like me to scroll down to 11?
I'm really close to it, so if you could read it.
You can look at that one there.
Oh, okay, there we go. I'm sorry. Okay. Is that the same language we have for the other CUP on this property, as far as 300 feet?
That's our standard notice radius.
That works for me.
Same here.
I'm good with it.
Does it still cover how that is being done? In other words, that it doesn't say, of course, because the extension is requested by the applicant. Okay.
Is there notice of the city manager's decision?
It's not in here, no.
Because a lot of decisions are made in this room.
The city manager could post his decision to the transparency portal, and that's a direction you could provide to the city manager directly.
And if that notice would include that language, I think if that happens, I'd be happy with it.
You're saying the provision has that language?
No, the notice,
The notice that goes out to the.
yeah, saying the city manager will make,
Says where the decision
will be
announced.
so therefore there's a mechanism to appeal.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Might want to use determination again, Alex, just the same.
Do we need to have?
And it's not always his. I want to keep you around forever, Jose. Don't get me wrong, but
We'll clean that up.
okay, yeah.
I mean, and is that too specific? I mean, who knows 10 years from now whether we have some holographic thing and,
Right,
Do you want to just say that that the notice will provide
The notice will
provide the method of the manager's, of notification of the manager's,
Yeah, because what if we don't have websites the same way? True.
or just, like town crier, maybe we're going backwards.
Yes.
It'll be a town crier.
You'll post it.
Okay.
Don't nail it to the trees, though.
Oh, we're getting tired already. It's only 9.
I'm feeling like it's like hour 11, right? This is an extension of our 7 hours. We should have done this on the 11th. We should have done this on the 11th, and we wouldn't be here.
Determined decision? The method of the.
Notice of the determination.
Method of the notice. No, the notice of the determined.
No, it is, you're right, it is notice of method, which is a weird phrase. No.
Notice of the reason for any request
That means
extension.
2 mailings is what I see
Notice
that.
of-
No,
I
it could
think
be on
no.
the
Let me
website.
just say it in plain English. What I envisioned was that the notice would go out saying, we've asked for an extension, this is our rationale, that city manager will act within 30 days, and his decision will be announced via X method. So that in the initial notice, people are then aware on day 30 or 31 they know where to go to see what the decision was. So Alex, you don't need to stand there and draft that, but that's the idea.
Yeah, and that direction can be provided directly to staff. Generally, in conditions of approval, those are conditions imposed on the applicant. So that's definitely something staff can keep in mind and incorporate into any future approval. In terms of if you want it in the notice and you want to lay out specifically what's in the notice, we can always provide guidance to the applicant, and the applicant's here too.
Can we provide here that Jose has to be here in 15 months so that he can remember how this works?
I can include that as a number.
I think I'm fine without specifying that piece.
Just the notice will be given to the public regarding the decision or of the decision? Or of the,
Yeah, we could just say that.
notice will be given to the public. Not saying the mannerism or the method, but just notice will be given to the public of the decision or,
Yes.
Great. Nice job.
termination.
Should there be a temporal component to that?
It is.
No, 'cause you-
Prompt.
oh.
Prompt. Squishy.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
On to 11.
Just to cut through this, I think I've heard from folks that have, the council members who have voiced their opinion on this. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that Councilmember Goss and I are in favor of allowing the additional aeration exception during the 15 months. Councilmember Parkhurst is not in favor of that, and I think we have two undeclareds, just to give a sense of where we're at as a council in a straw vote.
And I don't have a strong feeling on it. I could go, I mean, yes, that's what I stated. You're accurate. I'm not a sword I'm going to die on.
I just feel like before we make Alex stand up there and draft back and forth, that we should maybe have, a consensus on direction. I'm sorry, Mr. City Attorney.
Do you recall how long you have to stay off the field after an aeration?
No, I don't.
Do you want me to ask?
Well, I mean,
or speak?
they mentioned 8 days that weren't weather related. I guess I assumed that those were all maintenance related, and I don't know if there's maintenance beyond aeration. I don't know if, I don't think it's 8 days after aeration, but.
So then why would that normally be done during school hours or school times? No, I'm saying not during holidays.
Because it depends on when the landscape contractor can do it, wants to do it, type of turf, weather.
Ms. Jukic, if you could speak in the microphone if you're going to speak. Okay.
We can just,
for
we can
the
just,
pub-
we can
repeat
just-
what you're,
we
we
can
can
just
recite what you're
repeat
saying,
just
yeah.
was said from the audience,
it was
was
a
that
couple
couple
days
days after aeration, and it's,
So-
can't be locked into a certain time because it's dependent on getting the person to do it.
Yeah, that was one of my concerns.
Well, and I think the other thing was and weather. So you start really binding the hands of the school. So
I'm fine with leaving aeration in there.
Yeah.
Yep. So now you've got 4 knowns. 5, okay.
So I think then it's a hybrid of the two, right?
Mm-hmm. It goes down to D.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
There's an asterisk there.
He just deleted it.
Oh, that's deleted. Got it. Okay. Can you go back up just so I can see A through D again? Thank you. it as worded.
If I could see, F. I guess it's not F, it's, yeah, D, F, okay.
Isn't that, wait a minute, wouldn't the wording though be, because the 15 months was not just for the use of during water, it was also during general play, recess, congregation, and lunch, except for other things, so wouldn't that be repetitive if it's at the end of the 2022-2023 academic year, or is that the 15 months?
No, this
That's
is
a
just this
different.
is just a whole different
That's a different,
paragraph.
that's a different consideration, yeah.
Okay.
And this is minutia, but we refer to a period of 15 months. Do we want to call it the period of 15 months here? Because it might be construed as 30 months to a periods of 15 months. I don't know how you see it.
I think we have enough in the administrative record to make clear that it's 15 months.
Okay, good.
You think?
Are you good with that, contract attorney?
I am good with that.
Okay. I'm sorry, City Attorney, could you go back up? I want to see what D is, because I know some things moved.
D is occasional religious and I can't pronounce that. Occasional religious uses.
Liturgical.
Liturgical.
Is that meant to be, if you can go back down, I want to make sure. Is that what we wanted? Okay.
That allows for that beyond the 15 months.
Oh, yeah. I want to make sure that's.
That's why we.
Okay.
Are we at a point where we're ready to make a motion?
Any more discussion? Okay, I just want to, again, like I did last time, thank both parties. This could be a lot more painful for us up here as it has been. You guys have been very gracious, so thank you.
So I'll move to adopt the amendments of, what should we be calling this? Help me out, City Attorney
The
Gargosian.
Appeal of Planning Commission, oh, let's see.
There's a resolution.
There we go, yeah. So I move to approve the amendments as reviewed by the City Council to Resolution 2313.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask for an accommodation? I know we already approved the agenda.
Are we going to kick something?
Can we defer legislative session part 2 to a future meeting?
I think since it's really just a
motion?
I'm sorry. I don't know if I can make a motion. We already approved the agenda.
There's no action being taken on this, right?
You could always continue an agenda item.
Let's do that.
I move to continue the last item on the agenda, which is the legislative update part 2 to a future meeting to be determined by staff.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
Wait, we have a motion.
Hold it.
Yeah.
I'll withdraw
We
for a
haven't,
moment.
no, we haven't adjourned, we haven't made a motion to adjourn yet,
And we
so
still
let's-
have.
Do yours first.
Future, yeah.
And then
Well,
we'll do
I
that.
think she wanted to do it before everybody left,
Okay.
Oh.
but
Well,
go
it's for
ahead.
public television.
Go ahead. I will pause my motion.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Krebs. The polls have closed now. They closed at 8 o'clock. The preliminary results that were received have been tabulated and are posted on the county's website at lavote.net. They're also posted on the city's website and on the city's social media. The preliminary numbers, the tabulation reflects that the yes votes are 1,598 and the no votes are 1,316. They did have a higher number of voters at the vote center today, and so they will be tabulating the votes through the rest of the week, and they will be also tabulating the vote by mail votes up until Friday of this week. So we'll have a better, closer to complete number by the end of the week.
Laura, that number the number count you just gave, what time was that on the registrars?
That was at about 8:10 this evening.
What percentage of the votes cast have been counted? It looks to me like it's almost 90. Is that true?
Of the vote by mail ballots received, it was high 80s, close to 90.
Right.
And of the vote center ballots, only about 10% had been counted at that point. There are still ballots that were outstanding from vote by mail that'll be received up until Friday of this week.
Laura, did they have a number for how many people voted today in the vote center?
I've asked for that number, but they don't know as of yet. They're still breaking down the poll center.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And those ballots that were 8 o'clock tonight is the last time they can pick up the ballots in this box?
The ballots will be picked up shortly from the vote center at the former Bank of America building, and they will also be picked up here at the ballot box. And anything after today won't be counted.
Technically, they can still vote after 8 p.m.
I mean, by dropping it?
You can technically mail something after 3 p.m. if there's a 3 p.m. pickup date.
Yeah, but it wouldn't get today's date if you weren't sure it was gonna.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You run the risk of missing when they empty out the.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to drive down to the airport at the main hub to get today's. Ask me how I know that.
I was I was about to say. I think it sounds like you have some experience with that.
All right, let's,
All right.
thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Stay on agenda here, yeah.
So I will reinstate my motion to continue agenda item legislative session update part number 2 to a future meeting to be date determined by the staff.
Is there a second? Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Parkers. All those in favor?
Aye.
New business. I know we did have a plea for an agendized item. I don't know if, during public comment, I don't know if that's,
Is that the transportation one, or is that no? There's another one.
was
Library.
the library.
Oh,
Library.
yes, the library.
Funding.
I think it would be the responsible thing of us to at least discuss this, so. If we could agendize that.
What would you like us to agendize?
Yeah, it's,
Looking at funding for the library project with the amounts that have come in from the current status, do we anticipate we will need to reach into our
reserves.
our reserves?
I don't know if it was anticipated. It might have been. Is there a appetite to supplement? I mean, it's
maybe
kinda the
it's
same thing, but
maybe it is. It's like, what are the funding opportunities, or what is the funding needs to renovate the library? Is that closer? No.
I mean, I think that they're currently doing the plans based on the money that we have, and so I the way I heard former Mayor Stockley was, do we want to consider supplementing the funding with monies from city reserves at the point in time in which that funding could be worked into the plan to augment what they're doing?
Considering budget
I guess the other
coming up.
It felt like
I have. Oh, go ahead.
felt like furniture and fixtures. He said, from what he heard, it's gonna be an empty building.
I think he just listed, actually, he listed the furnishings, he listed the move costs, he listed the changes that will
Archives.
happen to, not just that it was, I can read it, let's see, go ahead.
I think, is there enough direction?
I think it's just,
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
the other question I have is, we've had this discussion a number of times and really kind of come down to the constraints that the time frame is pushing on us. Is there no recourse for discussing with the funding agency some leeway on that? Not because we don't want to do it, but because that's an incredibly aggressive construction schedule, even from when we got the money. I mean, it's not like they gave us the money a year ago and we've been,
Is that a question we need answered on an agenda item, or can?
No, I just, that was just
You
sort of
put that
I would
okay.
like to hear if that's a possibility, if that at all, because that would, I think, impact.
It's
the
very
discussion.
important for the discussion, I think, yes.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
second item, I'd like to get a report from staff. It doesn't have to be a presentation necessarily, but a report from staff on a transportation strategy, plan, and timeline. I think we heard very clear from the senior commission as well as from, I had his name up here, the young man, the 16-year-old young man that gave a very.
Mr. Romero.
Romero, thank you. Great. That we need to get a solid plan together that I think would help us support it and help guide the commission that Councilmember Goss is leading. Because I think that would just, I would hate to have the senior commission come back up here and it's been another year and we have not reached resolution. I have full confidence in Councilmember Goss to drive it with all expediency, but having the timeline, it'll help me support it.
Are you asking for like a plan for the plan? You're not asking for the actual, like, we plan to expand the route and
Thank you.
expand the
No.
hours?
It's a plan for the plan. So we're gonna have Berkeley in here to do this. We're gonna have, city meetings. Like,
Survey.
there's a strategy on it. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? What are the kind of the elements on it, and what are the timeframes on it? Not what the final decisions are. So thank you for that clarification. Yeah, no, that's too much.
So there's a structure for the ad hoc committee to kind of follow.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Some kind of a timeline, so we know at the first meeting we can hit the ground running and know exactly what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think staff has direction on that too.
Great.
Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor, I did receive an update just now from the county in answer to your question about how many votes were done today. During the 10-day process, we've received 679 votes at the vote center. Approximately half of those were today, 324 of in-person voting at the vote center. That does not include the vote by mail ballots, it's just in-person voting at the vote center.
Another 300, okay.
Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, any other new business?
That's only half. Sorry.
Yes.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn the meeting tonight.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You need a second.
I heard a second.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear a second.
Well, I had my hand in front of my mouth.
Well.
We are adjourned, thank you.
Aye. Thank you. Sort of broke down at the end.